Hey everyone. Tonight we're looking at something that will fundamentally change how you view photographs. Something that shows the final moments before people vanished without explanation. Something that captures evidence of what happened when words cannot. We're talking about the last photos and videos taken before unexplained disappearances. Images that documented final moments. Footage that captured things the photographers didn't see. Pictures that contain details noticed only after it was too late. Videos that show normal situations turning inexplicably wrong. These aren't just photographs. They're evidence. They're warnings. They're the last visual record of people who would never be seen again or who would be found under circumstances that defy explanation. For the next several hours, we're going to examine these images in detail. We'll look at what they show, what they hide, and what they reveal about the moments before disappearance. We'll analyze backgrounds for things that shouldn't be there. We'll discuss the expressions and body language of people who didn't know they were in danger. We'll explore the technical details that experts have found disturbing. Before we begin, go ahead and like this video if you're ready to see evidence that will disturb you. Subscribe if you want to explore the visual documentation of unexplained disappearances. And leave a comment telling me if you've ever taken a photo and noticed something wrong in it later. Now turn off the lights, get comfortable, and prepare yourself. Because once you see these images and understand what they contain, you'll look at every photograph differently. Let's begin with one of the most famous and disturbing cases of last photos before disappearance. The case of Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. In April 2014, two Dutch students, Chris Kremers, age 21, and Lisanne Froon, age 22, went hiking in Panama. They were bright, adventurous young women on a trip to volunteer and explore. They set out on the Pianista Trail near Boquete, a popular hiking path that should have been safe and straightforward. They never returned. 10 weeks later, their backpack was found by a local woman. Inside was Lisanne's camera, both of their phones, and other personal items. The camera contained over 100 photos from their hike. The photos tell a story that becomes increasingly disturbing the more you examine them. The early photos show exactly what you'd expect from two friends on a hiking adventure. Smiling selfies at the trailhead. Pictures of the beautiful landscape and vegetation. Images of stream crossings and trail markers. Everything looks normal, happy, exactly like a typical hiking trip. The last normal photo was taken at 1:54 p.m. on April 1st. It shows Chris standing on a rocky area, smiling at the camera. Behind her is dense jungle vegetation. The photo looks completely ordinary. Then there's a gap. No photos for several hours. The next photos were taken in complete darkness. Starting at 1 a.m. on April 8th, 7 days after the last normal photo, someone took over 90 photos in the span of 3 hours. All in the middle of the night. All in complete darkness. These nighttime photos are deeply disturbing. Most show nothing but blackness or blurry vegetation, lit by camera flash. They appear to be taken randomly, pointing in different directions. Some show the back of Chris's head, her distinctive red hair barely visible in flash. Some show what appears to be trail markers made from sticks. Some show rock faces and vegetation. Many show sky or canopy, as if the camera was being pointed upward. The photos are chaotic, unfocused, seemingly taken without looking through the viewfinder. As if someone was using the camera flash as a light source or signal rather than trying to photograph anything specific. But here's what makes these photos truly disturbing. Photo 509 is missing. Between photo 508 and photo 510, there should be one more image. But photo 509 was deleted from the camera. Forensic analysis confirmed it was permanently deleted, not just a failed shot. Why would someone in a survival situation, using precious battery life for photos, take the time to delete one specific image? What was in photo 509 that needed to be removed? One digital forensics expert said, "The deletion of photo 509 is deliberate. It wasn't camera malfunction. Someone accessed that photo and permanently deleted it. The question is, who and why? What was captured in that image that someone needed to erase?" Analysis of the photos has revealed other disturbing details. In some of the nighttime photos, there appear to be light sources that aren't the camera flash. Small points of light in the background that shouldn't be there in the middle of the jungle at night. In several images, the positioning suggests the camera was at ground level, as if dropped or placed on the ground, rather than held. One photo shows what appears to be the back of Chris's head, but the angle and distance suggest someone else was holding the camera. Her hair appears wet and matted in a way that troubled investigators. Another photo shows a close-up of small branches arranged in what looks like a trail marker. But the arrangement seems too deliberate, too organized, as if someone was creating markers rather than following them. The phone data adds another layer of mystery. Both phones had emergency calls attempted starting the afternoon of April 1st, hours after that last normal photo. The calls didn't connect due to lack of signal. Multiple attempts were made over the following days. The phones were turned on and off, as if checking for signal. Then on April 5th, someone entered an incorrect PIN into Lizanne's iPhone twice, apparently trying to unlock it. The same thing happened on April 6th. On April 11th, Chris's phone was turned on one final time. By then, the phone had been on and off repeatedly for 10 days in the jungle. 2 months after their disappearance, remains were found. A boot with Lizanne's foot still inside, bone fragments, Chris's pelvis. The bones were bleached white, scattered, in a condition that Dutch forensic experts said was inconsistent with natural decomposition in jungle conditions. The photos remain the most detailed evidence of what happened to these women, and they raise more questions than they answer. What happened between 1:54 p.m. on April 1st and the nighttime photos days later? Why were over 90 photos taken in darkness in 3 hours? What was in the deleted photo? 509. Who tried to unlock Lizanne's phone with incorrect pins? What do those mysterious lights in some photos represent? One investigator who studied the photos extensively said those images document something, but we can't determine what. The chaos, the darkness, the seemingly random nature of the shots. It's like someone was signaling for help or marking locations, or like someone was trying to document something but couldn't see what they were photographing. The missing photo is the most troubling aspect, what was captured that needed to be deleted. The case of Chris and Lizanne demonstrates how photographs can document final days without providing clear answers about what happened. Now let's look at another case where the last photo contains details that weren't noticed until it was too late. The case of Thelma Pauline Melton. In September 1981, Polly Melton, age 58, went on a hike in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park with her husband and some friends. The group was hiking the Deep Creek Trail, a popular and well-maintained trail. At one point, the group stopped for a break, and Polly's husband took a photo of her sitting on a log. She's smiling at the camera, looking relaxed and happy. It's a typical hiking photo, the kind thousands of people take every day. Polly's husband snapped the picture. They rested for a few more minutes, then continued hiking. Except Polly didn't continue with them. At some point in the next few minutes, Polly vanished. The exact moment isn't clear because the group was spread out on the trail. When they regrouped, Polly wasn't there. The group searched immediately, calling for her, backtracking along the trail. Nothing. Within hours, a massive search operation was underway. Park rangers, search dogs, helicopters, hundreds of volunteers. The area was searched extensively for weeks. Polly was never found. For decades, that last photo of Polly sitting on the log was just a sad memento of her final moments. Her husband looked at it occasionally, a painful reminder of the last time he saw her. But in recent years, researchers examining the photo digitally noticed something disturbing. In the background of the photo, in the tree line behind where Polly is sitting, there appears to be a figure. It's partially obscured by vegetation and distance. But when the image is enhanced and magnified, you can see what looks like someone or something standing in the trees. The figure appears to be watching the group. It's tall, dark, and positioned in a way that suggests it's partially concealed. Polly's husband never saw anyone in the background when he took the photo. The group didn't notice anyone following them or watching them. But the camera captured something they didn't consciously observe. One photo analyst who examined the enhanced image said there's definitely something in that tree line, whether it's a person, and if so, whether they're relevant to Polly's disappearance, we can't determine definitively. But the positioning suggests someone watching from concealment, and the fact that this was the last photo of Polly before she vanished makes it significant. The enhanced photo has raised disturbing questions. Was someone following the group? Was Polly being watched before she disappeared? Did she notice this figure and go to investigate, leading to her disappearance? We'll never know, because Polly was never found to tell her story. But that photograph, taken as a simple hiking memento, may have documented the presence of whoever or whatever was responsible for her disappearance. This pattern appears in multiple cases. Last photos that contain figures or anomalies and backgrounds that weren't noticed at the time. Images that only reveal their disturbing details when examined later, after disappearance made them significant. Let's discuss another case, where the last photo is disturbing not for what it shows, but for the expression on the subject's face. The case of Amy Lynn Bradley. In March 1998, Amy Bradley, age 23, was on a Caribbean cruise with her family aboard the Rhapsody of the Seas. The cruise was a celebration, a family vacation that should have been joyful and memorable. On the night of March 23rd, Amy was photographed on the ship's deck with her family. Several photos were taken that evening, showing Amy enjoying the cruise. But one photo from that night has bothered investigators and Amy's family ever since. In this particular photo, Amy is standing at the railing, looking out at the dark ocean. She's not posing for the photo, she's not looking at the camera. She appears to be staring at something in the distance with an expression that family members described as troubled or concerned. Her body language is tense, not relaxed. Her face shows an expression that doesn't match the vacation atmosphere. The photo was taken by another passenger who was photographing the deck and happened to capture Amy in the frame. Hours later, Amy vanished from the cruise ship. Her father last saw her sleeping on the balcony of their cabin at 5:30 a.m. When he checked again at 6 a.m., she was gone. Despite the ship being searched thoroughly, despite being in the middle of the ocean with nowhere to go, Amy vanished completely. The prevailing theory is that Amy was abducted, possibly by human traffickers operating in the Caribbean. Multiple witnesses have reported seeing her in various locations after the cruise, including disturbing sightings suggesting she was being held against her will. But that last photo of Amy staring out at the dark ocean, with that troubled expression, haunts those who examine it. What was she looking at? Why did she appear concerned or worried? Did she see something that night that led to what happened to her? One investigator said that photo captures Amy in a moment where something is wrong. She's not enjoying the cruise in that moment. She's focused on something, troubled by something. We don't know what, but her expression and body language suggest she was aware of some threat or concern hours before she vanished. The photo is a reminder that sometimes the last images of people capture subtle warnings that we can't interpret in time. Now let's look at a case where the last photo was taken by the victim themselves, documenting their final moments. The case of Geraldine Largay. In July 2013, Geraldine Largay, known as Jerry, was hiking the Appalachian Trail in Maine. Gary was 66 years old, an experienced hiker attempting a through hike of the trail. She was hiking with her husband, who would meet her at certain points, but for most of the trail she hiked alone, communicating with him via text when she had cell signal. On July 22nd, Jerry sent her husband a text in some trouble, got off trail to go to Brawl, now lost. Can you call AMC to see if a trail maintainer can help me? Somewhere north of Woods Road. XOX. That was her last communication. Search and rescue operations began immediately. The search was extensive, covering vast areas of dense Maine forest. Gary was never found during the active search. 2 years later, in October 2015, a surveyor working in the area discovered a campsite and human remains. It was Jerry. She had died from exposure and lack of food and water, only 2 miles from the Appalachian Trail. Despite extensive searches, she'd remained undiscovered for over 2 years. But here's what makes this case particularly heartbreaking and significant for our discussion. Gary had kept a journal during her time being lost. She documented her experience, her attempts to survive, her hope for rescue, and she had her camera. The photos on her camera tell the story of her final weeks. The last photos before she got lost show typical trail scenes. Beautiful Maine landscapes, her campsite, trail markers. Everything normal and optimistic. Then the photos change. After she became lost, Jerry took photos documenting her makeshift shelter. Images of her camp, showing how she was trying to survive. Photos of her attempts to signal for rescue, including an SOS she spelled out with ferns and branches. Pictures of her dwindling food supplies. Self-portraits that show her physical deterioration over the weeks. The progression is heartbreaking. Early photos after getting lost show her looking worried but determined. Later photos show exhaustion and despair. Final self-portraits show a gaunt, weakened woman who knows she's dying. One photo shows Gary sitting at her shelter, looking directly at the camera with an expression of profound sadness and resignation. She knows in that moment that rescue isn't coming. The photos were date-stamped, allowing investigators to track her decline day by day. Her journal entries accompany the photos, providing her thoughts and feelings. She documented attempting to walk in different directions, looking for the trail. She documented her rationing of food and water. She documented her hope fading as days turned into weeks. The final journal entry was dated August 18th, nearly a month after she became lost. The final photos were taken around the same time. Gary's case is devastating because we have complete documentation of her experience. The photos show a capable, determined woman slowly losing the fight against the wilderness. What makes it even more tragic is that Jerry was so close to the trail. Searchers came within 100 yards of her location during the initial search, but didn't see her shelter or hear her calls for help. If they'd been just slightly closer, if she'd been in a slightly different location, she would have been rescued. One SAR member who participated in the search said knowing Jerry was there the whole time, alive for weeks, taking photos and writing in her journal, hoping for rescue while we were searching nearby. It's devastating. Those photos document her experience, her hope, her declining condition. They're a record of survival that almost succeeded, but ultimately failed. They haunt everyone who's seen them. Gary's photos raise important questions about wilderness survival and search effectiveness. Why did searchers miss her despite her being relatively close to the trail? How many other people have been in similar situations? Undiscovered. The visual documentation of her experience is both valuable for understanding what happens when people become lost and heartbreaking in its depiction of slowly dying while hoping for rescue that doesn't come. Now let's discuss a case where the last video taken is disturbing not just for what it shows, but for what happens during the recording. The case of a hiker whose identity has been kept private, but whose last video has been analyzed extensively. In 2015, a solo hiker was recording video while hiking in a wilderness area in the Pacific Northwest. The hiker often recorded videos of their hikes for personal documentation and to share with friends. The video starts normally. The hiker is walking along a trail, narrating about the scenery and the hike. Everything is completely ordinary. About 5 minutes into the video, the hiker stops talking mid-sentence. The video continues recording, showing the trail ahead, but the hiker has gone completely silent. For the next 3 minutes, the video shows the trail, with occasional sounds of footsteps but no speech. Then the hiker's voice returns, but it sounds different. Flat, monotone, lacking the enthusiasm from earlier. The hiker says, "I need to go this way now." The camera pans to show the hiker, leaving the trail and heading into dense forest. The next few minutes of video show the hiker pushing through increasingly difficult terrain. No trail, no clear destination, just walking deeper into the forest. The camera work becomes shakier, the breathing audible and labored. Then the hiker says, in that same flat voice, "I'm supposed to be here." The video shows more forest, more difficult terrain. The hiker says they're waiting. Then the video ends. Not because recording stopped, but because the phone died or was turned off. The hiker was reported missing when they failed to return from the hike. Search and rescue found the hiker's vehicle at the trailhead. They found the phone several miles into the forest, off any trail, in an area that required difficult bushwhacking to reach. The hiker was found near where the phone was found, deceased from exposure. When investigators watched the video, they were disturbed by the change in the hiker's voice and behavior. The sudden silence mid-sentence. The flat, monotone voice that returned. The decision to leave the trail for no apparent reason. The statements about being supposed to be here, and they're waiting. One psychologist who reviewed the video said, "The change in effect and behavior is striking. The hiker goes from normal, enthusiastic narration to silence, then to flat, emotionless statements that suggest compulsion or altered mental state. The decision to leave the trail and head into difficult terrain appears purposeful but irrational. Something changed in those silent minutes." Theories about what happened range from medical event causing altered consciousness to psychological break to something more disturbing. The video documents the transition from normal hiking to whatever led to the hiker's death. But it doesn't explain what caused the change or what the hiker meant by their cryptic statements. The visual evidence raises more questions than it answers. Let's look at another case where a last photo contains an anomaly that investigators still can't explain. In 2012, a family hiking in Yosemite National Park took a group photo at a scenic overlook. The photo shows the family smiling, posed in front of a dramatic valley view. Everything looks completely normal and appropriate for a family vacation photo. But when the family reviewed the photos later, they noticed something in the background that troubled them. In the far distance, barely visible, there's a figure standing on a cliff edge that shouldn't be accessible. The cliff is technical climbing only, requiring equipment and expertise. It's not a place where casual hikers would be standing. Yet the figure appears to be standing there, arms outstretched, in a position that looks precarious and dangerous. The family didn't notice anyone on that cliff when they took the photo. They were focused on their own group photo and weren't paying attention to the distant background. When they reported the concerning figure to park rangers, showing them the photo, rangers were troubled. That cliff location isn't accessible without serious climbing gear. No climbing permits have been issued for that area that day. No one should have been there. Rangers searched the area and found no evidence of climbers, no gear, no footprints, nothing. 2 weeks later, a body was found at the base of that cliff. A hiker who had been reported missing several days before the family photo was taken. The body's position and condition suggested they had fallen from the cliff days earlier. But if the person died days before the family photo, how could they appear in the photo standing on the cliff? One possibility, the figure in the photo is someone else, coincidentally in that location, and the connection to the missing hiker is just unfortunate timing. Another possibility, the family photo captured some kind of photographic artifact or optical illusion that resembles a human figure. But the family and photo analysts insist the figure is clearly a person, and the position matches where the body was found. One photo forensics expert said, "I've examined that image extensively. There's a figure-shaped anomaly in the position the family indicates. Whether it's actually a person or something else is difficult to confirm due to distance and resolution. But it's there, and the timing relative to the body being found is disturbing. I don't have an explanation that satisfies all the evidence." This case represents photos that capture things that shouldn't be possible, creating mysteries that resist rational explanation. Now, let's discuss a case where the last selfie taken by hikers shows expressions that troubled everyone who saw it. In 2014, two hikers took a selfie on a mountain trail in South America. The photo shows both hikers, but their expressions are strange. Neither is smiling despite this being intended as a fun hiking photo. Both have wide eyes and tense facial expressions. One hiker's mouth is slightly open as if they were speaking or about to speak when the photo was taken. The overall impression is that both hikers look frightened or startled. This wouldn't necessarily be significant, except for what happened next. Both hikers disappeared within hours of that selfie being taken. One was found days later, deceased from a fall that investigators said didn't match the terrain or circumstances. The other was never found. That selfie remains the last image of them, and the expressions have been analyzed extensively. Were they reacting to something they saw? Were they already afraid of something when the photo was taken? Or are we reading fear into expressions that were just awkward photo timing? One facial expression expert said both subjects show signs of fear or startle response in that image. Wide eyes, tense muscles, open mouth. These aren't the expressions of people casually taking a hiking selfie. They're reacting to something. But we can't determine what from the photo alone. The photo raises questions about whether the hikers were already in danger when it was taken, whether they saw something that frightened them, or whether their expressions are coincidental. But combined with their subsequent disappearance and tragic outcome, the fearful expressions take on significance. Let's talk about a case where the last photo was taken accidentally and captures something the photographer never intended. In 2016, a hiker's phone was found in Colorado after they went missing. The phone had been damaged, likely from a fall, but forensic experts recovered data including photos. Most photos were typical hiking images, scenic views, and trail documentation. But one photo appears to have been taken accidentally, probably when the phone fell or was dropped. The image is mostly blurry and dark, taken at an odd angle suggesting the phone was tumbling or falling when the shutter triggered. But in the blur, photo analysts have identified what appears to be a hand, not the victim's hand, based on the angle and position. Another person's hand, reaching toward the camera as it fell. The hand appears to be trying to grab the phone or reaching toward the falling phone. The victim was found deceased near where the phone was found, with injuries consistent with a fall. But if someone was there with them, why didn't that person report the incident? Why was the victim alone when found? One possibility, the victim fell, the phone fell, and the hand in the image is from someone who came upon the scene after and tried to reach for the falling phone. But the timing makes this unlikely based on when the photo was taken versus when the victim died. Another possibility, someone was with the victim when they fell or caused them to fall, and the reaching hand is captured in the accidental photo. One forensics analyst said, "That hand is clearly reaching toward the camera, whether it's trying to catch the falling phone or reaching toward the victim as they fall. We can't determine, but it suggests someone else was present at the moment of the fall. Why that person didn't report it or call for help is a disturbing question." Accidental photos that capture evidence of other people present during incidents add complexity to cases that might otherwise seem straightforward. Now let's discuss a series of photos that document a person's growing disorientation and confusion before they disappeared. In 2017, a solo hiker was taking photos throughout their hike in Montana. The early photos are normal, showing beautiful landscapes and trail markers. But as the sequence progresses, the photos become stranger. Photos of the same tree from multiple angles as if the hiker was confused about something. Photos of the trail marker that look like the hiker was trying to photograph text or symbols, but the images are blurry and poorly composed. Several photos of the hiker's own feet and the ground immediately around them. Then photos that are completely unfocused, showing only blur and occasionally sky or treetops. The final photos in the sequence show darkness, as if taken at night or in deep forest, where little light penetrates. Some of these dark photos show what appear to be lights in the distance, small points of light that shouldn't be an uninhabited forest. The hiker was found deceased days later, miles from the trail in extremely difficult terrain. The progression of photos suggests increasing disorientation and confusion. From normal hiking documentation to confused, poorly composed images suggesting the hiker had lost track of where they were and what they were doing. The lights in the final photos remain unexplained. No other hikers were reported in that area. No campsites or cabins that would produce lights. No search teams were active at the time the photos were taken. One SR analyst who reviewed the photos said those images document someone becoming progressively lost and confused. The bizarre photo choices, the poor composition, the focus on irrelevant details, all suggest cognitive impairment or extreme disorientation. The lights in the final photos are troubling because we can't identify a source. Either the hiker saw something we can't explain, or the lights are artifacts of camera malfunction. Neither explanation is satisfying. Photo sequences showing cognitive decline before disappearance provide valuable data about what happens to lost hikers, but they also raise disturbing questions about what causes such rapid disorientation. Let's look at a case where a last photo contains symbols or markings that weren't there before and weren't there when searchers arrived. In 2018, a photographer hiking in the Pacific Northwest took a photo of a large rock formation. The photo clearly shows symbols carved or drawn on the rock face. Strange geometric patterns and shapes that the photographer didn't consciously notice when taking the photo. The photographer was focused on the overall composition and landscape, not the rock details. 2 days after taking this photo, the photographer went missing in that same area. When search teams looked for them, they checked that rock formation based on the photo's location data. The symbols weren't there anymore. The rock face was bare weathered, but with no carvings or markings. Yet the photo clearly shows symbols on that rock. One explanation: the symbols were temporary, drawn with chalk or charcoal that weathered away in the days between photo and search. But why would someone create such symbols in a remote location? Another explanation: the photo is somehow altered or corrupted, showing things that weren't actually there. But photo forensics analysis found no evidence of manipulation or corruption. The symbols appear to be photographed from the actual scene. One photo expert said, the symbols in that image are clearly present on the rock face. They're lit consistently with the rest of the scene. They have appropriate shadows and depth. They appear to be real markings, photographed in place. But if they weren't there when searchers arrived days later, either someone removed them deliberately, or something very strange is going on with the photographic record. The photographer was never found. The rock shows no symbols. But the photo documents symbols that were there at least when the image was captured. Now let's discuss a case where a last video shows the subject's behavior changing in real time in disturbing ways. In 2019, a vlogger was recording while hiking, creating content for their social media followers. The video starts with the typical enthusiastic narration about the hike, the scenery, the experience. About 10 minutes into the video, the vlogger stops mid-sentence and looks off camera. They say, "Did you hear that?" There's silence for several seconds as they listen. They continue, "Keep hearing something following me. It stops when I stop." The vlogger continues hiking while recording, now quieter and less enthusiastic. Every time they stop, there's silence. When they start walking again, you can hear footsteps on the trail behind them, captured by the phone's microphone. The vlogger notices this and says, "Someone's back there. Hello? Are you following me?" No response. The vlogger becomes visibly anxious, walking faster. The footsteps behind continue, maintaining the same distance. The vlogger starts jogging and the footsteps behind speed up to match. Then the vlogger stops abruptly and spins around, camera pointing back down the trail. The video shows empty trail behind them. No one visible despite the footsteps that had been clearly audible seconds earlier. The vlogger says, now clearly frightened, "There's no one there, but I heard them. I definitely heard footsteps." They continue hiking, now moving quickly, breathing heavily. The footsteps resume behind them. The vlogger doesn't stop or turn around again, just keeps moving quickly toward what they hope is the trailhead. Then they say, "Oh God, it's ahead of me now." The camera swings forward, showing the trail ahead. There's nothing visible on the trail, but the vlogger is clearly hearing something because they stop, looking confused and terrified. They say, "There's no way?" Then the video ends. Not because recording stopped, but because the phone died or lost connection. The vlogger was reported missing when they didn't return from the hike and stopped posting content. Search and rescue found their phone on the trail, battery dead. The vlogger was found several days later, deceased, miles off the trail in terrain that required deliberate effort to reach. The video remains the last documentation of their hike and the disturbing auditory experiences they had. Audio analysts have examined the video and confirm that footsteps are audible on the recording. But visual analysis shows no one on the trail. One audio forensics expert said the footsteps are definitely there in the recording. They match human walking patterns. They maintain consistent distance from the microphone. They respond to the subject's speed changes, but there's no one visible in any frame of video. Either we're dealing with sophisticated audio manipulation, which seems unlikely given the circumstances, or something was following that hiker that the camera couldn't capture visually. The video has been viewed millions of times online, with endless speculation about what was following the vlogger and why it couldn't be seen, despite being clearly heard. Now let's talk about a case where multiple last photos from different people in the same area all contain the same disturbing anomaly. In 2020, several hikers in a national park took photos over a period of 2 weeks. These were independent hikers who didn't know each other, hiking at different times. 3 of these hikers subsequently went missing or had disturbing experiences in that area. When investigators gathered photos from the time frame, they noticed something remarkable. Multiple photos from different hikers all show the same figure in the background. A tall, dark figure standing at the edge of the tree line in various locations. The figure appears in photos from different days, taken by different people in different parts of the park. But it's clearly the same figure based on height, build, and appearance. None of the photographers consciously saw this figure when taking their photos. They were focused on their own subjects, their own compositions. The figure was only noticed when reviewing images later. One photo analyst who examined all the images said the figure appears in 7 different photos from 5 different photographers over a 2-week period. The consistency in appearance, despite different lighting conditions, different angles, different locations, suggests this isn't a photographic artifact. Something or someone was in that park repeatedly during those 2 weeks, positioning themselves to be in the background of photos, and none of the photographers noticed it consciously. What makes this even more disturbing is that the figure appears to be watching the photographers. In every photo, the figure's stance and orientation suggests it's looking toward the camera, toward the photographer. Not engaged in its own activity, not hiking past, but stationary and observant. Park officials investigated after the pattern was discovered, but found no evidence of anyone matching the description. The 3 hikers who had disturbing experiences or went missing had all taken photos that included this figure. Other hikers whose photos showed the figure but who had no incidents reported feeling watched or uncomfortable during their hikes. This case represents one of the most compelling examples of photographic evidence suggesting surveillance or stalking of hikers by something or someone that avoids direct observation. Let's discuss a case where the last photo's metadata contains information that doesn't match the known facts. In 2018, a missing hiker's camera was recovered. The last photo on the camera showed the hiker standing in front of a distinctive rock formation. The photo appeared to be a normal selfie, the kind hikers take constantly. But examination of the photo's metadata revealed something impossible. The timestamp showed the photo was taken at 3:47 p.m. The GPS coordinates embedded in the photo placed the location precisely. But here's the problem. According to the investigation timeline and witness reports, the hikers should have been in a completely different location at 3:47 p.m. They were seen by other hikers on a different trail at 3:30 p.m., miles from where the GPS coordinates placed them. The terrain between the 2 locations would require at least 2 hours of difficult hiking. Yet the metadata suggests they traveled that distance in 17 minutes. One digital forensics expert said, either the metadata is corrupted or wrong, which is possible but unusual, or this photo documents something that violates physics. A person can't travel that distance in that time frame over that terrain. The location data and the timeline are incompatible. Attempts to reconcile the metadata with a known timeline have failed. Either the camera's GPS was malfunctioning and provided false location data, or something about the photo is deeply anomalous. The hiker was never found alive, though remains were eventually discovered in yet a 3rd location that doesn't match either the witness sighting or the photo GPS data. Metadata anomalies in last photos raise questions about reliability of electronic evidence and about whether something in these disappearance cases affects electronic recording devices. Now let's look at a case where a last photo appears to show the moment of disappearance. In 2015, a group of friends hiking together were taking photos throughout their hike. One photo shows the group posed together, smiling. Everyone accounted for. The next photo, taken seconds later, shows the same pose, same location. But one person is missing from frame. Not out of frame, not moved aside, but simply gone between shots. The missing person had been standing in the center of the group. The people on either side of them are still in the same positions, but the central figure has vanished. The group initially thought the person had ducked out of frame as a joke. But when they looked around, the person was nowhere to be seen. Within minutes, they were searching and calling. Within hours, it was an official search operation. The missing person was found days later, deceased, in a location that was difficult to reach and far from where the photo was taken. The photo remains inexplicable. Between two shots taken seconds apart, a person vanished from the middle of a group. One photographer who examined the images said these photos are sequential, taken seconds apart based on metadata. The first shows everyone. The second shows everyone, except the central figure. There's no blur suggesting movement. No indication the person walked out of frame. They're just not there in the second image. If this were the only evidence, I'd say it's impossible. But combined with the person actually going missing, these photos document something extraordinary and deeply disturbing. The group members who were there insist the disappearance happened that quickly, between photos, with no one seeing where the person went, as if they vanished in the seconds between camera shutter clicks. Let's discuss a case where last photos show a progression of something approaching the photographer. In 2017, a nature photographer was taking landscape photos in a remote area. The photos show beautiful wilderness scenes, exactly what you'd expect from nature photography. But in the sequence, if you look carefully at the backgrounds, something is approaching. The first several photos show distant tree line with nothing unusual. Then in subsequent photos, there's a dark shape visible at the edge of the trees. It's distant and unclear, but present. In each following photo, taken over about 30 minutes based on timestamps, the shape appears closer. Always at the edge of visibility. Always partially obscured, but definitely moving closer to the photographer's position. The photographer appeared to be unaware of this, focused on foreground subjects and compositions. But the camera documented something approaching from behind the photographer's field of attention. The final photos in the sequence show the shape much closer, though still not clearly defined. Dark, large, vaguely human-shaped, but not quite right in proportions. The last photo in the camera shows the photographer's equipment abandoned on the ground, taken at an angle suggesting the camera had fallen or been dropped. The photographer was found deceased near that location days later. One photo analyst said that sequence documents something approaching the photographer over 30 minutes. The photographer appeared unaware, focused on their work, but frame by frame, something was getting closer. The final image of abandoned equipment suggests something happened at that location. What exactly, we can't determine from the photos, but they document the approach of something before an incident that resulted in death. This case represents photos that tell a story the photographer didn't know was being recorded. Documentation of threat approaching before the subject was aware of danger. Now let's talk about a case where last video contains audio anomalies that experts can't explain. In 2019, a vlogger recorded video while hiking alone. The video is typical hiking content, narration about the trail and experience. But audio analysis of the video has revealed something disturbing in the background sound. Beneath the vlogger's voice and the normal wilderness sounds, there's a low-frequency audio pattern. It's below the range of conscious hearing, infrasound that the camera microphone picked up, but the hiker probably didn't consciously perceive. The pattern is too regular to be natural. It repeats at specific intervals with mathematical precision, and it increases in intensity and frequency as the video progresses. One audio engineer said that infrasound pattern is deliberate, not natural. Infrasound can affect human psychology and physiology in various ways, including producing feelings of unease or fear, causing disorientation, even affecting cognitive function. If this hiker was being exposed to this infrasound intentionally, it could explain behavioral changes or poor decision-making. The vlogger's behavior does change during the video. They become less coherent, more confused, eventually leaving the trail and wandering into difficult terrain. The vlogger was found deceased, with no clear explanation for why they left the trail or what led to their death. But the infrasound pattern documented in their video suggests they may have been exposed to something that affected their judgment and behavior. The source of the infrasound remains unknown. It's not equipment noise, not natural geological phenomena in that area. Something was generating that pattern of infrasound, and it was picked up by the camera even though the hiker likely didn't consciously hear it. This raises disturbing questions about whether some disappearances involve technological or natural phenomena that affect human behavior through frequencies we can't consciously perceive. Let's discuss a case where the last photo taken contains text or writing that wasn't there when the photo was taken. In 2016, a hiker took a photo of a trail marker. Standard photo documenting their location for navigation purposes. When the photo was reviewed later, after the hiker went missing, investigators noticed something. On the trail marker, in the photo, there's writing that wasn't on the marker when searchers checked the location. The writing appears to be scratched or carved into the wood. They're watching. Searchers who went to that exact marker found no such writing. The wood was weathered but unmarked. Photo forensics analysis confirmed the text is present in the image and appears to be actually on the marker in the photograph, not added digitally afterward. One forensics expert said, "The text in the photo is there. It's not added in post-processing. It appears to be physically present on that marker when the photo was taken, but it's not there now, and presumably wasn't there before. Either someone carved it between previous visits and the photo, then removed it before searchers arrived, or something very strange is happening with the photographic record. The hiker who took the photo was never found. The text they're watching takes on ominous significance in light of the disappearance. Warning, threat, message from or about whoever is responsible for these disappearances? We can't know, but the text existing in one photo but not on the actual marker creates a disturbing mystery about the nature of photographic evidence itself. Now let's look at a case where multiple last photos from a single hiker's showtime progression that doesn't match the timestamps. In 2018, a hiker's camera was recovered, containing photos that document their final hours. The photos show the hiker at various locations along the trail, but the timestamps and the visual evidence don't match. One photo shows the hiker in bright daylight at 2 p.m. The next photo shows the hiker at a different location in deep shadow or twilight at 2:15 p.m. Only 15 minutes passed according to timestamps, but the lighting has changed from midday to dusk. The next photo shows full darkness at 2:45 p.m. But sunset wasn't until after 7 p.m. that day. The photos document the hiker moving through locations and lighting conditions that don't match the camera's own timestamp record. One expert examining the photos said either the camera's clock was severely wrong or something about what this hiker experienced involved time functioning differently than normal. The lighting conditions in these photos can't all be from the same afternoon based on sun position and time of year, yet the timestamps suggest they're only hours apart. The hiker was found deceased in a location that should have been reachable in the time frame between first and last photos, but the journey documented in images suggests either much more time passed or conditions changed in ways that don't match normal progression of day to night. This case represents photos that document temporal anomalies, suggesting time doesn't function normally in whatever these hikers experience. Let's talk about a case where the last photo's color balance is wrong, in ways that suggest the lighting environment was unusual. In 2017, a photographer took a final image before going missing. The photo shows a normal forest scene, but color analysis reveals the light illuminating the scene has wrong properties. The color temperature is too high for natural sunlight at that time of day and location. The shadows have qualities that don't match a single light source, like the sun. And there's a subtle color cast to everything that doesn't occur in normal outdoor photography. One photo expert said, "The lighting in that image is wrong. It's not film color balance issues. The image is digital. It's not atmospheric conditions. We know what those look like photographically. The light illuminating that scene has properties that don't match any natural light source. Either the camera malfunctioned in very specific ways, or the lighting environment when that photo was taken was genuinely unusual." The photographer was never found, and the photo remains the last image they captured. The anomalous lighting suggests something about the environment where the photo was taken, but we can't determine what that something is. Now let's discuss a case where a last video shows the subject reacting to something off camera that never comes into frame. In 2020, a hiker recorded video while walking a trail. Midway through the video, the hiker stops and looks off to the side, off camera. Their expression changes from relaxed to concerned. They say, "What is that?" The camera remains pointed forward at the trail. The hiker continues looking off camera, their concern increasing to visible fear. They say, "That can't be." They back away from whatever they're seeing, still off camera. The video shows the hiker's face, showing terror, but the camera never turns toward what they're seeing. The hiker says, "Stay away from me." Then they turn and run, camera bouncing chaotically. The video shows several seconds of bouncing trail views as the hiker runs. Then impact, suggesting the phone fell. The video shows ground and then sky, phone lying in dirt. Footsteps running away, growing distant. Then other sounds, difficult to identify. Then silence. The video continues recording static scene for several more minutes before the phone dies. The hiker was never found. The phone was found where the video shows it fell, on the trail. But the hiker vanished completely, and whatever they saw that terrified them never came into frame of the video. We have documentation of a person reacting with extreme fear to something, running away and disappearing. But we never see what caused the reaction. One investigator said, "That video shows genuine terror. The subject's reaction is real. Their fear is authentic. They saw something that frightened them so badly, they ran, dropped their phone, and vanished. But we never see what it was. The most critical information, what they were looking at, is off camera. We're left with a person's reaction, but no understanding of what they reacted to." Let's look at a case where the last photo appears to have been taken by someone other than the missing person. In 2019, a solo hiker's camera was found. The last photo on the camera is a close-up of the hiker's face, But the angle and distance indicate the hiker didn't take this photo themselves. It's not a selfie, it's too far away, and the angle is wrong. Someone else took this photo of the hiker. But the hiker was supposedly alone. The photo shows the hiker looking directly at the camera with an expression that family members described as frightened or pleading. One family member said, "That's not how they would look in a normal photo. That expression is fear and helplessness," and someone else took that photo. Someone was with them at the end. The hiker was found deceased near where this photo's GPS data places the location, but no evidence of another person was found. No footprints, no additional disturbance, nothing suggesting anyone else was there. Yet the photo clearly shows someone else was holding the camera. One photo analyst said the angle, the distance, the framing of that photo indicate it was taken by another person standing a few feet away. The subject's expression and body language suggest they weren't comfortable with this photo being taken, but we have no evidence of who took it or why. It's documentary evidence of someone else present, but a person we can't identify or account for. This case represents photos that prove someone else was present during disappearances, even when physical evidence doesn't support that conclusion. Now let's discuss a case where a last photo contains reflections in water that show something that wasn't in the actual scene. In 2018, a photographer took a picture of a mountain lake. The photo shows beautiful reflection of mountains in the still water, but careful examination of the water reflection reveals something. In the reflection, there's a structure on the shore that isn't visible in the actual shore in the photo. Something that looks like a building or large constructed object reflected in the water. But the actual shoreline shows only forest and rocks, no structure. The reflection shows something that isn't there in reality. Photographer was found missing days after taking this photo. The camera was found near the lake where the photo was taken. When investigators went to that lake and that exact position, there was no structure on the shore. No evidence any structure had ever been there. Yet the photo's water reflection clearly shows architectural elements. One photo analyst said reflections in water show what's actually there. They're not creative additions by cameras. This reflection shows a structure of some kind on that shore, but there's no structure there and no evidence there ever was. Either we're dealing with very sophisticated digital manipulation, which doesn't make sense in the context of the case, or that photo documented something that exists in some state we don't understand. Let's talk about a case where last photos show the same location, but at different seasons, taken within minutes of each other according to timestamps. In 2017, a hiker's camera contained a sequence of photos that appear impossible. One photo shows a forest trail in what appears to be autumn, leaves on the ground, trees partially bare. The next photo, taken according to timestamps, only 3 minutes later, shows the same trail location but with full green summer foliage. The next photo shows winter conditions, snow on the ground. All 3 photos show the same distinctive rock formation and trail markers, clearly the same location. But 3 different seasons documented in spans of minutes? One explanation: the timestamps are wrong. These photos were taken months apart. But the battery level indicators in metadata show continuous slight decrease, consistent with photos being taken in sequence. The mystery remains unsolved. The hiker was found deceased, and the photos are analyzed regularly by people trying to understand how images showing 3 seasons were taken in sequence. One researcher said, "Those photos violate our understanding of time and season. They show the same place in different seasonal states within minutes." Either the camera's dating system was catastrophically wrong in very specific ways, or something about what that hiker experienced involved temporal or seasonal discontinuity. Neither explanation is satisfying. Now let's discuss a particularly disturbing case, where last photos form a sequence that appears to spell out a message. In 2016, a photographer disappeared after taking a series of photos. When investigators reviewed all the photos chronologically, they noticed something disturbing. 17 photos from the final hour before disappearance. Each photo, when looked at individually, seems random. Close-ups of tree bark, rocks, ground, foliage. But when the photos are arranged in sequence and examined for patterns, letters appear. Natural formations in each photo that happen to look like letters. K in the bark texture. I in the arrangement of sticks. L's in the shadow of a branch. Lull in the pattern of leaves, and so on. The sequence of photos, read in order, spells out "kill me now please." 17 photos that individually seem like random nature photography, but collectively spell out this disturbing message. Was the photographer deliberately creating this message? Arranging photos to spell out a plea for death? Or is this pattern coincidental, meaning seen in randomness after the fact? One photo analyst said, the letters are present in each photo, whether they were intentionally photographed to create this message or whether we're finding pattern in randomness. I can't determine, but the message that emerges is chilling. Either the photographer was in such distress they were creating a coded plea, or coincidence has created a message that reflects what happened to them. The photographer was found deceased by their own hand. Whether the photo message was intentional communication or tragic coincidence, it remains a disturbing final documentation. Let's look at a case where the last video captured audio of a conversation with someone who wasn't visible on camera. In 2019, a vlogger's final video shows them hiking and narrating. At one point in the video, the vlogger stops narrating and appears to be listening. Then they begin speaking, but not in their typical vlogger voice. They're having a conversation with someone. I didn't know this trail went that way. Pause. As if listening to response. You've been here before? Pause. Sure. I'll follow you. I was getting lost anyway. The vlogger laughs, relaxed, as if talking to a friendly, helpful person. They start following someone off the trail, camera pointing ahead showing forest. No person visible in frame despite the vlogger clearly following someone and having a conversation. The vlogger continues talking to this unseen person for several minutes. How far is it? Pause. Yeah, the trail did seem confusing back there. Pause. You hike here a lot? The conversation continues. Normal and friendly, for about 8 minutes of video. Then the vlogger says, wait, where are you? Their voice changes from friendly to confused. I can hear you, but I can't see you. Where did you go? Growing concern in their voice. This isn't funny. Where are you? I'm lost now. The video shows increasingly dense forests, the vlogger turning in circles looking for someone. Hello? Please. I don't know how to get back to the trail. Now fear in the voice. The video continues, showing the vlogger's growing panic as they realize they're alone, lost, and whoever they were following is gone. The video ends with the vlogger crying, admitting they're terribly lost. The vlogger was found deceased days later, miles from any trail in extremely difficult terrain. The video documents them being led deep into wilderness by someone or something they could hear, but that never appeared on camera. One audio analyst said, the vlogger is clearly having a conversation. They're responding to prompts, listening to responses we can't hear in the video. Either they were talking to someone who was somehow invisible to the camera, or they were experiencing auditory hallucination convincing enough that they followed it deep into dangerous terrain. Either possibility is deeply disturbing. This case represents videos that document people being lured or led by entities that don't appear on camera, but that the subjects clearly perceive and interact with. Now let's discuss a case where multiple last photos from the same camera show impossible image sequences. In 2018, a missing hiker's camera showed photos that created timeline problems. Photo A shows the hiker at location 1. Photo B shows the hiker at location 2, several miles away. Photo C shows the hiker back at location 1. Photo D shows location 2 again. The timestamps show these photos were taken over a span of 2 hours. But the distances between locations would require at least 6 hours of hiking to cover. The hiker apparently traveled between distant locations multiple times in timeframes that make the travel impossible. One possibility, someone else moved the camera, taking photos at different locations while the hiker was elsewhere. But the photos include the hiker, clearly taken by self-timer or by someone with them. Another possibility, the timestamps are wrong, and these photos span a much longer time frame. But other evidence, including battery levels and sun positions in images, don't support this. The photos document movement patterns that violate normal space and time. One investigator said that camera documents the hiker being in places they couldn't reach in the documented time frames. Either the photographic record is completely unreliable, or something about their experience involves spatial discontinuities. I don't have an explanation that accounts for all the evidence. Let's talk about a case where the last photo's composition appears deliberately framed to include something in the background that the photographer likely didn't notice. In 2017, a hiker took a photo of a scenic waterfall. The composition is centered on the waterfall, typical nature photography. But the framing includes, at the edge of frame, barely visible, what appears to be a figure in the trees. The figure is positioned exactly at the edge of the frame, like it was deliberately included. But the hiker's other photos suggest they weren't a particularly skilled photographer who would carefully compose to that level. And the figure is subtle enough that the photographer probably didn't consciously see it. Yet it's perfectly framed at the edge. As if something wanted to be in the photo without being the obvious subject. As if the photo was subtly manipulated to include this figure without the photographer noticing. The hiker disappeared hours after this photo. When analyzed, the figure shows unusual properties. It doesn't quite fit the depth of field. It's sharper than it should be, given the focus point. It has subtle lighting inconsistencies with the rest of the scene. One photo forensics expert said, that figure has characteristics suggesting it wasn't part of the scene when photographed in the normal sense. Either it was added digitally, which seems unlikely given the camera and context, or something about how it appears in the image is genuinely anomalous. The framing that perfectly includes it seems too precise to be accidental, suggesting someone or something wanted it documented. As we continue through these disturbing last photos and videos, certain patterns emerge. Figures and backgrounds that weren't noticed during photography. Audio capture that documents things the subjects couldn't see. Temporal and spatial anomalies in sequences of images. Expressions of fear or concern captured before subjects understood they were in danger. Evidence of other people or entities present that can't be accounted for. Messages encoded in images, whether intentional or coincidental. Changes in behavior documented as subjects become disoriented or influenced. These photographic records provide evidence of what happens in the moments and hours before unexplained disappearances. They show us that something is happening, even if they can't always show us what that something is. The photos and videos are evidence that resists easy interpretation. They document experiences that don't fit normal frameworks. They provide proof that these disappearances involve genuine anomalies, not just people getting lost in normal ways. As we approach the end of this exploration, we must acknowledge that photographic evidence, while valuable, also has limitations. Cameras capture what's in front of them, but interpretation requires human understanding. Images document moments, but context comes from knowing what happened before and after. Visual evidence proves something occurred, but determining exactly what requires analysis that may not be possible. The last photos and videos from unexplained disappearances give us windows into experiences we don't fully understand. They're fragments of stories that ended tragically. They're evidence that raises more questions than it answers. But they're also the best documentation we have of phenomena that resist other forms of study. These images are warnings. They show us that danger exists in forms we don't always recognize. They document that people experience things before disappearing that we can't always explain. They prove that the unexplained aspects of these cases are real, not just coincidence or misinterpretation. If you take photos while hiking, while exploring, while venturing into remote areas, those photos may be the last record of your experience. Take them seriously. Document your surroundings, not just for aesthetic reasons, but for safety. Review your photos and look for things you didn't notice when taking them. Pay attention to backgrounds, to anomalies, to things that seem wrong. And most importantly, if you see something in your photos that troubles you, take it seriously. Don't dismiss it as trick of light or camera malfunction. Consider that you may have documented something genuine, something dangerous, and act accordingly to ensure you don't become another case of last photo before disappearance. The images we've examined tonight show that cameras capture truth even when we don't consciously perceive it. They document the approach of danger before we realize we're threatened. They record evidence of things we don't understand. And they provide the last visual evidence of people who encountered something in wilderness that they couldn't survive. Sleep now with this knowledge. May you never take a last photo before disappearing. May your images always document safe experiences and happy memories. May you never become a case we analyze, wondering what your final photos show about what happened to you. The camera sees what we miss. The photographs document what we don't notice. And sometimes, the last photo captures the moment when everything changes. When the normal hike becomes something else. When the beautiful landscape hides something dangerous. When the adventure turns into tragedy. These last photos are all we have of those moments. All we have to study and try to understand. All we have to warn others about what can happen. The visual evidence exists. The patterns are documented. The mysteries remain unsolved. But the photos don't lie. They show us something is happening. Something that cameras capture even when human eyes don't perceive it. Something that takes people from trails and forests. Something that leaves only images as evidence. Good night. May you photograph only beauty and safety. May your images tell stories of adventure survived, not disappeared into. May you never be the subject of the last photo before unexplained disappearance. The cameras remember what we forget. The images preserve what we miss. And sometimes, in those pixels and frames, truth hides. Truth about what's really in the wilderness. Truth about what happens to those who disappear. Truth we're not sure we want to see. But truth that exists nonetheless. Documented. Preserved. Waiting to be understood. Good night. The last photos have been shown. The evidence has been presented. The mysteries remain. Sleep well. And when you wake, think twice before venturing into places where you might take photos you don't want to be your last. The wilderness is beautiful, But the last photos show it's also dangerous in ways cameras can see better than we can. Let me continue with more disturbing cases of last photos and videos that deserve examination. Let's talk about the case of a photographer whose camera continued taking photos automatically after they disappeared. In 2016, a wildlife photographer set up a camera with motion-activated and time-lapse features in Washington state. The photographer was documenting wildlife patterns and had the camera configured to take photos at regular intervals. The photographer went missing while checking the camera setup. When the camera was recovered weeks later, it contained thousands of photos. The early photos show what you'd expect: wildlife passing by, occasional shots of the photographer adjusting equipment. But then the photos show the photographer leaving the frame and not returning. The camera continued taking photos on its timer for days after the photographer disappeared. These photos document something disturbing. In many frames, there are shadows that don't match any visible objects. Shadows of something tall, something human-shaped, but with wrong proportions, something that casts shadow but doesn't appear in the images. The shadow appears in hundreds of photos over multiple days, always in different positions, as if whatever casts it is moving through the area regularly. In some photos, the shadow falls across the exact spot where the photographer was last seen, as if whatever casts that shadow is standing where the photographer disappeared. One photo analyst who examined the entire sequence said those shadows are consistent across multiple photos. They follow sun angles correctly, they interact with terrain appropriately. They're real shadows cast by something, but whatever casts them isn't visible in the photographs. Either we're dealing with something that can cast shadows without being photographically visible, or there's some optical phenomenon we don't understand. Neither explanation is satisfying. The photographer was found deceased miles from the camera location. The shadow in hundreds of photos remains unexplained. Now let's discuss a case where our last video shows the subject receiving a phone call that changed everything. In 2018, a hiker was recording video while hiking alone in Colorado. The hiker was narrating about the beautiful day and enjoying the trail. Mid-sentence, their phone rang. The hiker answered, "Hello?" Long pause listening. Their expression changed from relaxed to confused. "What? Who is this?" Another pause. "How do you know where I am?" The hiker looked around nervously while still recording. "I don't understand what you're asking me to do." Pause. "Why would I do that? That doesn't make sense." The hiker's voice became agitated. "Stop calling me. I don't know you." They hung up. The video shows the hiker standing still looking disturbed. They said to the camera, "That was so weird. Someone called me and knew I was hiking here. They wanted me to go to some specific coordinates off trail. They said it was urgent, but wouldn't explain why. They knew my name and exactly where I was. That's really creepy." The hiker continued recording for a few more minutes, clearly unsettled. Then the video shows the hiker stopping and looking at their phone. "They sent me a text with the coordinates and a photo." The hiker's face went pale. That's my car. They took a picture of my car at the trailhead." The video shows the hiker's hands shaking. "Okay, this is not okay. I'm calling the police." The hiker tried to make a call but showed no signal. No service, of course. The video shows the hiker deciding to head back to the trailhead, quickly. "I'm getting out of here. This is too weird." The hiker started walking quickly back toward the trailhead. Camera still recording. For several minutes, the video shows rapid walking, heavy breathing, the hiker looking around nervously. Then the hiker stopped suddenly. "Oh my God." The camera panned to show the trail ahead. Standing on the trail, blocking the path, was a figure. Too far to make out details clearly, but definitely a person. The hiker said, Did they send someone?" The hiker called out, "Hello, I'm heading back to my car. Please move." The figure didn't move. The hiker tried going around through the forest. The video shows them pushing through brush off trail. For several minutes, chaotic footage of movement through vegetation. Then the hiker stopped, breathing hard. "Where's the trail? I can't see it anymore." The hiker spun around, camera showing forest in all directions. "I was just on the trail. Where is it?" Growing panic in the voice. Okay, I have GPS on my phone. I'll use that." The video shows the hiker pulling out their phone. No signal, no GPS, the location services aren't working. The hiker's voice cracked. "I'm lost. I went like 50 feet off trail and now I can't find it." The video continues, showing the hikers' increasingly desperate attempts to find the trail. They climbed a small hill to try to see the trail or landmarks. Nothing recognizable, visible. The hiker said, "That phone call, someone called me, scared me off the trail. Now I'm lost." The video shows the hiker trying to retrace their steps. Walking in circles, nothing looking familiar. As it started getting dark, The hiker's panic was obvious. "I should have just stayed on the trail. Why did I go into the forest?" The video continues as darkness falls. The hiker using phone flashlight to try to navigate. "I'm going to stay here for the night. Try again in daylight." The hiker found a spot to sit, back against a tree. The video shows their face, tear-streaked, and terrified. "If anyone sees this, I got a weird phone call while hiking. Someone knew where I was. They sent me coordinates off trail. Then there was someone on the trail blocking it. I went around them and got lost. I don't know what's happening, but this feels wrong. This feels planned." The video continues for another hour, showing the hiker sitting in darkness, occasionally speaking their thoughts. Then a sound in the forest. The hiker froze. What was that? Footsteps approaching through the darkness. The hiker whispered, "Someone's here." The footsteps got closer. The hiker stood, camera shaking. "Who's there? Hello?" No response, but footsteps continued. Multiple sets of footsteps from different directions. The hiker ran. The video shows bouncing footage of running through dark forests. Heavy breathing, branches hitting the camera. Then a cry of pain as the hiker tripped. The camera fell, showing ground, and then the hiker's hand reaching for it. The video captured someone else's hand grabbing the phone first. The hand was wearing gloves. The video showed the gloved hand turning the phone over, examining it. Then the recording stopped, not from battery death, but from being deliberately ended. The hiker was never found. The phone was found weeks later in a completely different area, wiped clean, all data except this video deleted. Investigators traced the phone call that started everything. It came from a burner phone purchased with cash, activated that day, used once, then destroyed. The coordinates the mysterious caller sent led to a location deep in wilderness with no trails nearby. One investigator said, "That video documents what appears to be a planned operation. Someone called the hiker, knew their location, sent them threatening information, then had someone block the trail to force the hiker into the forest, where they became lost. Then multiple people pursued them in the dark. This appears to be human predation. But the level of planning and execution is disturbing, and the hiker's body was never found, nor any evidence of who these people were." This case represents last videos that document what appears to be organized human involvement in disappearances, adding a dimension of human evil to wilderness mysteries. Now let's look at a case where a last photo accidentally captured a reflection in the photographer's sunglasses that shows something they weren't consciously seeing. In 2017, a selfie taken by a hiker in Oregon contained a disturbing detail. The photo shows the hiker smiling, wearing sunglasses, typical hiking selfie. But when the image is enhanced and the sunglasses reflection is examined, something appears. In the curved reflection of the sunglass lenses, you can see what was behind the hiker. Forest as expected. But also a figure, standing in the trees about 30 feet behind the hiker. The figure appears to be watching the hiker, standing motionless in partial concealment. The hiker was alone on this hike and saw no one else on the trail that day. Yet the reflection clearly shows someone was there, close enough to be visible in the sunglass reflection. The hiker disappeared later that day. When the photo was found and analyzed, the figure in the reflection became key evidence. But despite enhancement and analysis, the figure's identity couldn't be determined. Too small in the reflection, too partially obscured. But definitely a person, definitely watching the hiker who didn't know they were being observed. One forensic photo analyst said, "That reflection is legitimate. It shows someone was behind the hiker when this selfie was taken." The hiker appeared unaware of this person's presence. Within hours, the hiker disappeared. The reflection may have captured the last image of whoever was responsible for the disappearance, but we can't identify them from the image quality available in the reflection. Reflections in sunglasses, windows, water, and other surfaces sometimes capture things the photographer didn't consciously see, providing evidence that only emerges when images are carefully examined. Let's discuss a case where a series of last photos shows objects moving in backgrounds between shots. In 2019, a photographer taking landscape photos in Montana captured something unusual. The photographer was taking multiple shots of the same scene with slight variations in exposure and composition. When the photos are viewed in sequence, something is moving in the background. Not wildlife, not a person obviously walking, but objects that shouldn't move on their own. In one photo, there's a backpack on the ground in the distance. In the next photo, taken minutes later, the backpack is in a different position. In another sequence, a hiking stick that was leaning against a rock is standing upright in the next frame. In another, stones arranged in a pattern have changed configuration between shots. Small changes, easy to miss unless you're comparing frames carefully, but definitely changes that suggest someone was manipulating objects between the photographer's shots. The photographer apparently didn't notice these changes while shooting. They were focused on getting the right exposure and composition of their main subject. But the camera documented that the scene was being altered while they worked. The photographer went missing that evening. When found deceased days later, they were surrounded by objects arranged in unusual patterns. Rocks stacked in impossible balances. Sticks arranged in geometric shapes. Personal items from their pack organized in symmetric layouts, as if whoever was moving things in the background of the photos continued the behavior, arranging objects around the photographer after they died. One investigator said those photos document someone or something manipulating the environment while the photographer worked. The photographer was so focused on their shot, they didn't notice. Then when they died or were killed, the same entity continued arranging objects around their body. This suggests compulsive behavior, possibly psychological disorder in a human or something else with incomprehensible motivations. Let's talk about a case where a last video's audio contains backward speech that only became apparent when the audio was analyzed. In 2018, a vlogger's last video seemed like typical hiking content. But audio analysis revealed something hidden in the background sound. When certain portions of the ambient audio are isolated and played in reverse, they contain clear speech. Not gibberish or random sounds that happen to sound like words when reversed. Clear, deliberate sentences in English. The forward audio just sounds like wind or rustling. But reversed, it's someone speaking. The backward speech says things like follow the markers and come this way, and don't be afraid. As if someone was speaking backwards into a recorder, creating audio that would sound like normal ambient noise, but would contain messages when played in reverse. The vlogger apparently heard these sounds as normal background noise and didn't realize they contained reverse speech. But the vlogger's behavior in the video changes after these backwards messages appear. They start walking off trail, as if following something. They mention feeling drawn to explore a particular direction. They seem confused about why they're leaving the trail, but continue anyway. The backward speech continues. That's right. And keep coming, and almost there. One audio forensics expert said that backward speech is definitely present and definitely deliberate. Someone created audio designed to sound like normal ambient noise when played forward, but to contain instructions when reversed. Whether the human brain can subconsciously process reverse speech and be influenced by it is debatable. But the vlogger's behavior matches the instructions in the backward speech, suggesting it may have influenced them somehow. The vlogger was never found. The final backwards message in the audio, just before the video ends, now you're ours. This case represents sophisticated audio manipulation, being used to potentially influence people's behavior, raising questions about whether some disappearances involve technological means of control or influence. Now let's discuss a case where a last photo was taken by a stranger who gave it to the missing person just before they disappeared. In 2016, a hiker was photographed by another hiker they met on the trail. The stranger offered to take the hiker's photo with a scenic background. The hiker gave the stranger their camera. The stranger took several photos, then returned the camera. They chatted briefly, then went separate directions. Hours later, the hiker went missing. When the camera was recovered, those photos taken by the stranger contained disturbing elements. In the first photo, the hiker is centered, smiling, normal composition. In the second photo, the framing has shifted slightly. In the third photo, more shift. By the final photo the stranger took, the hiker is barely in frame, pushed to the edge. And what's centered in the final composition is the forest behind the hiker. Specifically, a dark area of dense trees where something appears to be present. The progression of photos shows the stranger deliberately reframing to center on this dark area, rather than on the hiker. As if the stranger was more interested in photographing whatever was in those trees than in taking a nice photo of the hiker. When enhanced, the dark area shows a shape, possibly a figure, that the hiker wouldn't have seen from their position facing the camera. One photo analyst said, the stranger started by photographing the hiker normally, then progressively shifted composition to center on something behind the hiker. The final frame barely includes the hiker and focuses on the forest. This suggests the stranger saw something interesting or significant in those trees and was documenting it rather than the hiker. Search teams attempted to identify the stranger based on the hiker's description. No one matching that description was registered at the trailhead or seen by other hikers that day. The stranger appears to have been there specifically to photograph the hiker and whatever was behind them, then vanished without trace. This case raises questions about whether some people in wilderness areas are there specifically to document disappearances, possibly knowing in advance where they'll occur. Let's look at a case where multiple last photos from different missing people in the same area all show the same time on their cameras, despite being taken months apart. In 2017 to 2018, 5 different people disappeared in the same general area of wilderness in California over a period of 8 months. Each person's camera was recovered. When investigators compared the photos, they noticed something impossible. The last photo from each camera showed the exact same time, 3 hours 33 minutes and 33 seconds. Not approximately 3:33, but exactly 3:33 and 33 seconds. 3 hours, 33 minutes, 33 seconds. 5 different cameras, 5 different dates, 5 different photographers. All stopped or malfunctioned at precisely the same timestamp. One forensic analyst said, the probability of 5 cameras all failing or stopping at exactly 3 hours 33 minutes and 33 seconds by coincidence is astronomical. This suggests either deliberate tampering with the camera's time settings or something in that area affects electronic devices in very specific ways. The 3:33:33 pattern is too precise to be random failure. Some researchers have proposed that the specific time represents a signal or marker. Others suggest electromagnetic phenomena that affects electronics specifically at that timestamp. Still others believe it's evidence of something that exists outside normal time, creating a specific temporal marker in photographs. Whatever the explanation, 5 cameras recording the same impossible timestamp at the moment 5 people disappeared is a pattern that demands explanation. Now let's discuss a case where a last video shows the subject's shadow behaving impossibly. In 2019, a hiker recorded video while walking a trail. The video shows normal hiking footage, the hiker's shadow visible on the ground cast by the sun. But about 15 minutes into the video, the shadow starts behaving strangely. The hiker is walking at a steady pace, but their shadow appears to move at a different speed. Sometimes ahead of the hiker, sometimes lagging behind. The hiker doesn't appear to notice this discrepancy, but viewers can clearly see the shadow not matching the body's movement. In one particularly disturbing sequence, the hiker stops walking, but the shadow continues moving for several steps before stopping. Then the shadow turns and appears to be facing the hiker, despite the sun angle being wrong for that shadow orientation. One video analyst said, shadows don't behave independently of the objects that cast them. That's physical law, but in this video, the shadow is definitely moving in ways that don't correspond to the hiker's movement. Either we're dealing with video corruption or compression artifacts, creating the illusion of independent movement, or something genuinely impossible is documented in this footage. The hiker disappeared that day. When found deceased, their body was positioned as if they'd been running from something, but no evidence of what they fled from was found. Did the hiker finally notice their shadow behaving impossibly and flee in terror? Did the impossible shadow represent something else, present that the camera could only capture as shadow manipulation? The video remains one of the most analyzed pieces of evidence for suggesting that physical laws don't operate normally in whatever these people experience. Before disappearing, let's talk about a case where a last photo contains an impossible number of people. In 2018, a group of 4 hikers took a group photo in Washington. They used a tripod and timer to capture all 4 of them together. When they reviewed the photo later that day, they noticed something wrong. There are 5 people in the photo. Not 4, but 5. The 5th person is standing at the back of the group, partially visible between 2 of the actual hikers. The group insisted only 4 of them were there. No one else was on that trail. They were alone when they set up the shot. Yet the photo clearly shows 5 people. The 5th person is slightly out of focus, darker than the others, and their features are difficult to make out. But it's definitely a person-shaped figure standing with the group. Hours after this photo, one of the 4 hikers disappeared. When search teams found this photo, they wondered if the 5th person in the image was somehow connected to the disappearance. But no one matching that description was seen in the area. One investigator said that 5th figure is present in the image. It's not a shadow, not a double exposure, not a technical artifact. Something person-shaped was standing with that group when the photo was taken. Either they're all misremembering and there was a 5th person, which seems unlikely given their certainty, or something that doesn't photograph normally appeared in that image. The missing hiker was eventually found, but with no memory of what happened during their missing time. The 5th figure in the photo remains unexplained. Now let's discuss a case where a last video shows the subject aging rapidly over the course of an hour of recording. In 2017, a vlogger recorded what they thought would be a typical hiking video. The video starts with the vlogger looking normal, their usual appearance. But as the video continues, viewers have noticed something disturbing. The vlogger appears to age visibly over the course of the recording. In early frames, they look their actual age, late 20s. By the middle of the video, they appear to have aged years, showing lines and weathering they didn't have an hour earlier. By the end of the video, they look decades older, exhausted, worn down in ways that suggest years of aging. The changes are subtle frame by frame but dramatic when comparing the beginning and end. One medical professional who viewed the video said, if those are the same person at beginning and end, and if the timestamps are correct, we're seeing aging that would normally take decades compressed into an hour. That's not medically possible. Either the video is manipulated, the timestamps are wrong, or something about what this person experienced caused rapid aging that doesn't match biology as we understand it. The vlogger was found deceased, and their body showed signs of advanced age beyond their known years. Medical examiners were confused by the tissue degradation and cellular aging that appeared accelerated, as if the person had lived decades longer than their actual age suggested. The video documented this impossible aging in real time. Let's talk about a case where last photos show the same location, but with completely different vegetation and terrain features. In 2016, a hiker took photos throughout a day hike. The photos show a specific trail marker from different angles as the hiker passed it multiple times. But the area around the marker is different in each photo. In morning photos, it's surrounded by pine trees and rocky ground. In afternoon photos, the same marker is surrounded by deciduous trees and grassy ground. In evening photos, it's in what appears to be completely different terrain, with different vegetation types, and even different geological features. The trail marker is identical, the distinctive damage and weathering patterns match perfectly, but everything around it changes between photos. One geologist who examined the images said those photos can't all be from the same location on the same day. The vegetation types, the soil composition, the geological features, they're completely different. Yet the trail marker is identical. Either we're looking at a very elaborate hoax involving multiple trail markers made to look identical, or something about that location allows different environments to exist in the same space at different times. The hiker was never found after that day. The photos remain evidence of something impossible, the same location existing in multiple different physical states. Now let's discuss a case where a last video's audio contains a frequency that affected everyone who listened to the video. In 2019, a hiker's final video was posted online by family, hoping someone might recognize the location and help find them. Within hours, dozens of viewers reported feeling ill after watching the video. Headaches, nausea, disorientation, anxiety. The symptoms appeared regardless of whether viewers watched with sound on or off, suggesting something in the audio was affecting people even at low volumes. Audio analysis revealed an extremely low frequency component in the background sound, a frequency below normal hearing range, but within the range that can affect human physiology and psychology. The frequency was steady, artificial, not matching any natural sound source, and it was increasing in intensity throughout the video, as if the source was getting closer to the hiker. One audio engineer said that infrasound component is powerful enough to cause physical symptoms in listeners. Where it came from is unclear. No natural phenomenon in that terrain would produce such sound. No human equipment was supposed to be in the area. Yet the hiker was apparently being bathed in this infrasound during their final video, and it affected them as it affects viewers. The hiker's behavior in the video shows increasing disorientation and anxiety, consistent with infrasound exposure effects. They became progressively more confused, eventually leaving the trail and wandering into difficult terrain where they died. The source of the infrasound was never identified. The video was removed from online platforms due to the reported health effects on viewers. This case represents evidence that some disappearances may involve technological or natural phenomena that affect human physiology through frequencies we can't consciously perceive, but that electronic devices can record. Let's look at a case where the last photo taken shows the photographer's dead body. In 2018, a hiker's camera was found containing photos that are impossible to explain. The sequence shows normal hiking photos, the hiker taking selfies and landscape shots. The final photos in the sequence show the hiker's body lying on the ground, clearly deceased. The photos are taken from angles above the body, looking down, as if someone or something was standing over the body and photographing it. But the photos are on the hiker's own camera, with no time gap suggesting the camera was recovered and used later. The timestamps show these photos were taken immediately after the last selfie the hiker took. How can a camera photograph its owner's dead body from external angles immediately after the owner took their last photo? One forensic analyst said, those photos are impossibly present on that camera. Either someone else was there and used the camera immediately after the hiker died, then left it with the body, or we're dealing with something that doesn't match any reasonable explanation. The photos document death from an external perspective, but they're on the victim's own camera, with timestamps suggesting they were taken in sequence with the victim's own photos. The images have been studied extensively for evidence of how they could exist. No satisfactory explanation has been found. They represent photographs that shouldn't be possible, documentation of death by the deceased's own camera. Now let's discuss a case where multiple unrelated hikers' last photos all captured the same unusual cloud formation before they disappeared. Over a 2-year period in Colorado, 7 hikers disappeared in the same general area. 6 of those 7 had cameras that were recovered. When investigators compared photos, they found that 5 of the 6 cameras contained photos of the same unusual cloud formation. The photos were taken on different dates over 2 years. Yet the cloud pattern is identical. Not similar, but identical. The exact same shape, size, and configuration of clouds. Clouds don't remain identical over minutes, let alone months or years. Yet 5 different photographers captured what appears to be the exact same cloud formation before disappearing. One meteorologist said, "Clouds are dynamic, constantly changing. 2 photos of the same clouds taken seconds apart will show differences." The idea that 5 photos taken over 2 years show identical cloud patterns is impossible, unless they're all photographing the same moment, or unless something about that area creates repeating atmospheric phenomena we don't understand. Some researchers believe the cloud formation is a marker or sign, that it appears before disappearances as a warning or indicator. Others think it represents some kind of atmospheric anomaly connected to whatever causes the disappearances. The pattern is too consistent to be coincidence, but too impossible to fit normal meteorology. Let's talk about a case where a last video's playback speed appears to vary within a single continuous recording. In 2017, a hiker recorded video of their experience. When played back, the video appears to have sections at different speeds despite the metadata showing constant frame rate. Some portions seem sped up, the hiker moving jerkily and quickly. Other portions seem slow, the hiker's movements taking longer than they should, yet the timestamp counter runs consistently. 1 hour of recording shows 1 hour on the playback counter. But the amount of activity and distance traveled in that video doesn't match 1 hour. Either too much happens in the hour, suggesting time compressed, or too little happens, suggesting time dilated. One video analyst said the frame rate is constant according to metadata. The playback duration matches the recording duration, but the content doesn't fit. It's like watching a video where time isn't flowing at constant speed for the subject, even though the camera records at constant speed. That suggests the subject experienced time differently than the camera recorded it. The hiker was found deceased with their bodies showing degradation inconsistent with the time they'd been missing. Too much decomposition for days, as if weeks had passed. Yet witnesses confirmed the timeline. They'd only been missing days. The video seems to document temporal distortion that affected the hiker but not the camera itself. Now let's discuss a case where a last photo appears to have been taken from an impossible vantage point. In 2016, a hiker's final photo shows them standing on a trail, but the angle of the photo indicates it was taken from at least 20 feet above ground level. The hiker was alone, no one else present to take the photo. There were no trees, cliffs, or structures near that trail section that would allow that elevated angle. Yet the photo exists, clearly showing the hiker from above. The photo is on the hiker's camera, in sequence with their other photos, with continuous metadata. One photo expert said that photo was taken from an elevated position that doesn't exist at that location. Either someone used a drone, which the hiker didn't have, or someone was somehow suspended above the trail, or the photo represents something we don't understand about how images can be captured. The hiker went missing immediately after this photo was taken. The elevated angle suggests they were being observed from above by something capable of hovering or flying at that height. And whatever observed them apparently accessed their camera to document its own perspective. Let's look at a case where a last video shows the subject receiving a message on their phone that made them change their entire plan. In 2018, a hiker was recording while checking their phone for messages. On camera, you can see their phone screen as they read a text message. The message says, "Don't take the return trail. They're waiting there. Go through the canyon." The hiker looks confused and says on camera, "This is weird. I don't recognize this number. How does someone know where I am and what trail I was planning to take?" The hiker tries to call the number back. No answer. They send a text, "Who is this?" Immediate response, "A friend. Trust me, canyon route is safe. Trail route is not." The hiker, clearly unsettled, says to the camera, "This is really strange, but maybe I should listen. I don't know." After some deliberation recorded on video, the hiker decides to take the canyon route despite it being more difficult and not their plan. The video shows them entering the canyon, a route they weren't familiar with. The terrain becomes increasingly difficult. The hiker struggles, eventually becoming lost in the complex canyon system. The video documents their growing panic as they realize they're trapped in the canyon with no clear way out. The final recordings show the hiker exhausted, injured from a fall, unable to continue. They died in that canyon. Investigators traced the phone number that sent the messages. It was a burner phone, activated that day, used only to send those messages, then destroyed. One investigator said someone deliberately lured that hiker into a dangerous canyon where they died. The messages pretended to be helping, warning about danger on the safe trail, directing them to a dangerous route. This appears to be murder, using anonymous communication to manipulate the victim into a deadly situation. But no suspect was ever identified, and the method suggests someone with knowledge of the hiker's plans and the terrain. The video documents a manipulation that led directly to death, preserved in the victim's own recording. Now let's discuss a disturbing trend where last photos from missing people often contain the number 3 repeated in various forms. Researchers examining hundreds of last photos have noticed that an unusual number contain variations of the number 3. 3 trees prominently featured in composition. 3 rocks in foreground. 3 people in group photos where someone disappears. 3 birds in the sky. Trail markers showing 3 miles to destination. Timestamps showing 3:33. Photo numbers ending in 333. GPS coordinates containing repeating 3s. The frequency with which the number 3 appears in last photos exceeds what probability suggests for random occurrence. One statistician analyzing this pattern said the number 3 appears in last photos from disappearances at a rate significantly higher than random chance would predict. Whether this is meaningful or we're finding patterns in randomness is debatable, but the frequency is notable enough to warrant attention. Some researchers believe the number 3 is a marker or sign connected to whatever causes disappearances. Others think humans may be subconsciously drawn to photograph compositions containing 3 elements when they're in danger. Still others believe it's pattern-matching bias, seeing meaning in randomness. But the pattern exists in the data, whatever its explanation. As we continue examining these disturbing last photos and videos, we must acknowledge the cumulative weight of the evidence. Thousands of final images exist from people who disappeared or died under unexplained circumstances. These images contain patterns, anomalies, and possible elements that repeat across cases. Figures and backgrounds that weren't consciously observed. Temporal and spatial impossibilities, documented in sequential images. Audio capture that reveals hidden information. Expressions of fear and awareness captured before subjects understood danger. Physical phenomena, visible to cameras but not to human observers. Evidence of manipulation, surveillance, and predation. Documentation of impossible aging, impossible movement, impossible perspectives. The photos and videos are evidence that cannot be easily dismissed. They're objective records created by electronic devices, showing what actually existed in front of their sensors. Whatever limitations our human perception has, whatever blindnesses affect our consciousness, cameras capture without those limitations. They document reality as measurable light and sound, preserving evidence of phenomena we don't consciously perceive. The last photos before unexplained disappearances are perhaps the most valuable evidence we have about what's actually happening in wilderness areas. They show us that something exists that we don't fully understand. Something that cameras can document better than human memory. Something that leaves traces in photographs even when it avoids direct observation. The evidence exists in pixels and frames. Preserved forever, available for analysis and study, showing us truth about disappearances that words cannot capture. The patterns are real. The anomalies are documented. The impossibilities are photographed. And we're left to interpret what these images tell us about the nature of reality in places where people vanish. Sleep now, knowing that every photo you take might be evidence someday. The cameras see what we miss. That the last image before disappearing often contains clues we don't notice until too late. May you never take a last photo. May your images always document safe returns and happy endings. May you never become a case file where investigators examine your final photographs looking for answers about what happened to you. The cameras don't lie. The photos preserve truth. And sometimes that truth is more disturbing than any story we could create. Good night. May your photographs tell only stories of beauty and safety. May the images you capture never need to be analyzed for evidence of your disappearance. May you look at your photos and see only happy memories, not warnings you failed to heed. The last photos have told their stories. The evidence has been shown. The patterns are documented. And we're left with knowledge that cameras capture truth even when we don't want to see it. But there are still more cases, more disturbing images, more evidence that demands examination. Let's talk about a case where a photographer's entire camera roll was replaced with images they never took. In 2015, a wildlife photographer went on a solo trip to document a remote area in Alaska. The photographer was meticulous about their work, taking hundreds of carefully composed images over 3 days. When they returned and uploaded the photos, they were confused and disturbed. The images on the camera weren't the ones they remembered taking. Instead of wildlife and landscape photos, the camera contained images of the photographer themselves. Sleeping in their tent, photographed from outside through the mesh. Eating meals, photographed from across the campsite. Walking trails, photographed from behind at various distances. Hundreds of photos documenting the photographer's entire trip, taken by someone else. The photographer had no memory of anyone else being present. They saw no one, heard no one, found no evidence of anyone else in that remote area, yet their entire camera roll had been replaced with surveillance images of themselves. The metadata showed the photos were taken with their own camera, at times when the photographer believed they were taking their intended shots. One digital forensics expert said, either this photographer has a severe dissociative disorder and was photographing themselves without awareness, or someone accessed their camera throughout the trip and replaced every image. The latter seems impossible, given the isolation, but the former doesn't match the photographer's psychological profile or history. The photographer never went into the wilderness alone again. They were too disturbed by the realization that someone or something had been watching them the entire time, documenting their every move with their own camera. Now let's discuss a case where a last video shows the subject looking directly at the camera and speaking to someone who isn't the viewer. In 2019, a hiker recorded what would be their final video. The hiker is walking and narrating normally for the first 10 minutes. Then they stop and look directly into the camera with an intense, focused expression. They say, "I understand, I'll come with you." Pause, as if listening. "Yes, I see it now. It makes sense." Another pause. "I'm not afraid anymore." The hiker smiles, but it's a strange smile, not matching their previous expressions. "I know you're not going to hurt me. I know what you want to show me." The hiker turns the camera to show the forest ahead. Nothing unusual visible, just trees and undergrowth. But the hiker says, "It's beautiful. I never saw it before." They start walking forward into the forest, off any trail. The video continues for several more minutes, showing difficult terrain. The hiker breathing heavily but not speaking. Then the video ends abruptly. The hiker was found deceased days later, miles from any trail and terrain that required extreme effort to reach. Family members who watched the video were disturbed by the one-sided conversation. The hiker appeared to be responding to someone speaking to them, someone who could only be behind the camera. But the hiker was alone and filming themselves. One psychologist said, that video shows someone having a conversation with an entity they believe is real. Whether that entity existed objectively or was a hallucination, the hiker clearly believed in it enough to follow its instructions into dangerous terrain where they died. The calmness and acceptance in their demeanor is particularly disturbing. Let's look at a case where multiple photographers captured the same anomalous light phenomenon that appears to move intelligently. Between 2016 and 2018, 8 different photographers in Olympic National Park captured photos containing unusual light phenomena. The lights appear as orbs or spheres of white or blue-white light. But these aren't lens flares or camera artifacts. The lights appear in different locations within frames. They cast subtle illumination on nearby objects. They create slight shadows consistent with being actual light sources. And most disturbingly, when photos are arranged chronologically across different photographers, the lights appear to move through the park over time. A light photographed at location A in month 1 appears at location B in month 2, photographed by a different person. The progression suggests the lights are moving through the park in a pattern. 3 of the 8 photographers who captured these lights subsequently went missing or had disturbing experiences in the park. 1 disappeared entirely. 1 was found disoriented, with no memory of 3 days. 1 survived but refuses to discuss what they experienced after photographing the lights. One photo analyst said those light phenomena are consistently present across multiple photographers and cameras. They're not equipment artifacts. They appear to be actual light sources in the environment. The fact that they seem to move through the park over time, and that photographers who capture them often have negative experiences, suggests they're connected to whatever causes disappearances in that area. Park officials have no explanation for the lights. They're not equipment, not authorized activities, not any known natural phenomenon in that environment. Yet they appear in photos, move through the park, and seem connected to disappearances. Now let's discuss a case where a last photo shows the photographer's shadow with extra limbs that don't match their body. In 2017, a hiker took a photo that included their shadow cast by the setting sun. The shadow clearly shows the hiker's body and pose. But it also shows additional appendages extending from the shadow, arms or legs that don't correspond to the hiker's actual limbs. The shadow has 6 limbs instead of 4. The extra appendages are clearly defined in the shadow, not blur or distortion. They extend from the central shadow in ways that match the sun angle and ground surface. They're real shadows cast by something. But the hiker only has 2 arms and 2 legs. What casts the shadow of extra limbs? One photographer who analyzed the image said that shadow has components that don't match the human who cast it. Either there was something attached to the hiker that we can't see in the photo, or something else was standing directly behind the hiker casting a shadow that merged with theirs, or we're documenting something that doesn't follow normal physical rules about shadows matching objects. The hiker disappeared that evening. When found deceased, their bodies showed unusual marks on their back and shoulders, as if something with multiple limbs had been clinging to them. Let's talk about a case where a video shows the subject's reflection in water, not matching their actual appearance. In 2018, a hiker recorded video near a still pond. The hiker walks to the water's edge and looks down. The camera captures both the hiker and their reflection in the water, but the reflection is wrong. The hiker is wearing a red jacket. The reflection shows blue clothing. The hiker has short hair. The reflection shows long hair. The hiker is standing upright. The reflection shows a figure bent or hunched. For several seconds, the video clearly shows a mismatch between the person and their reflection. Then the hiker notices. They say, "What the hell?" They wave their arms. The reflection waves, but delayed and with different movements. The hiker backs away from the water, clearly frightened. "That's not me. That's not my reflection." They run from the water. The video shows them running down the trail, panicked. Several hours later, the hiker was found by other hikers, confused and disoriented. They had no memory of anything after seeing the wrong reflection. Medical examination found they were in mild shock but physically unharmed. But they never fully recovered psychologically. They refused to be near water afterward and required therapy for trauma. One psychologist said seeing your own reflection show something other than yourself is profoundly disturbing on a psychological level. It challenges your sense of self and reality. Whether this person experienced a genuine anomaly or a hallucination, the trauma was real and lasting. The video remains one of the clearest documentations of reflective surfaces showing impossible images. Now let's discuss a case where a photographer's last images show progressive distortion that suggests reality itself was warping. In 2016, a photographer took a series of landscape photos in Montana. The early photos in the sequence are normal, showing clear, properly focused images. But as the sequence continues, the photos show increasing distortion. Not camera focus issues or lens problems. The environment itself appears to be distorting. Straight trees appear curved. Geometric patterns in rocks appear warped. The horizon line bends in ways that don't match the terrain. By the final photos, the images are almost unrecognizable as normal landscapes. Everything is stretched, compressed, twisted in ways that suggest the space itself was deforming. One photo expert said, "Those images show progressive spatial distortion that isn't caused by camera malfunction or lens aberration. If we take these photos at face value, they document an environment where physical space was warping, where geometry wasn't functioning normally. That's impossible, according to physics, but the images clearly show it happening." The photographer was found deceased with unusual injuries, bones broken in patterns that suggested compression and twisting forces, as if the spatial distortion visible in the photos had affected their body as well. Medical examiners couldn't explain the injury patterns using normal trauma mechanisms. Let's look at a case where a last video's audio contains a countdown in a language no one could identify. In 2019, a hiker's video contained background audio that analysis revealed was counting down. The voice is faint, almost subliminal, speaking in a language that linguists couldn't identify. But the pattern is clearly a countdown. Descending numbers, regular intervals, building towards something. The countdown reaches 0 precisely when the hiker in the video suddenly stops, looks around confused, and says, "Where am I? How did I get here?" The hiker had traveled miles off trail during the video, but appeared unaware of it until the countdown reached 0, as if they'd been in some kind of trance or altered state while the countdown progressed. One linguist said, "That audio is definitely language, definitely counting down, but it doesn't match any known language family. The phonemes are unusual, the structure is alien. Either this is an artificial constructed language, or it's something we've never documented before." The hiker survived this experience but has no memory of the time during the countdown. They remember starting to hike, then suddenly being miles away with no memory of getting there. The video is the only record of what happened during that missing time. Now let's discuss a case where last photos show the same person in multiple locations simultaneously. In 2017, a photographer's camera contained images that appear impossible. One photo shows the photographer at location A, clearly identifiable by a distinctive rock formation. The next photo, time-stamped 3 minutes later, shows the photographer at location B, miles away. But it also shows the photographer still at location A in the background of the image. The same person appears to be in two places at once. Not similar looking people, but the same individual, wearing the same clothing with the same distinctive features. One photo forensics expert said, "Either we're dealing with sophisticated image manipulation, or these photos document something that violates basic logic. You can't be in two places simultaneously. Yet these images, if genuine, show exactly that." The photographer went missing after these photos were taken. Search teams found evidence of the photographer at both locations, as if they'd visited both. But the timeline makes visiting both impossible, given the distance and terrain. Let's talk about a case where a video shows time running backwards for objects, while running forward for the photographer. In 2018, a hiker recorded video that contains temporal anomalies. The hiker is moving forward through time normally, visible aging, and fatigue appearing as the video progresses. But objects in the environment appear to be moving backward through time. A tree that was fallen in early frames is standing upright in later frames. Weather progresses from afternoon to morning, instead of morning to afternoon. Shadows move in reverse of how they should move. The video shows two different temporal directions simultaneously. One researcher said, "If this video is genuine and unmanipulated, it documents something that challenges our understanding of time. Forward and backward time can't coexist in the same space." Yet this video appears to show exactly that, the subject moving through time, one direction, while the environment moves the other direction. The hiker in the video was never found. The camera was found alone, containing only this impossible footage. Now let's discuss a disturbing trend where last photos often contain faces in random patterns that weren't visible when the photo was taken. Researchers examining thousands of last photos have noticed a pattern. Many contain what appears to be faces and backgrounds. Not obvious faces, but faces visible in the patterns of tree bark, rock formations, shadow patterns. Pareidolia. The human tendency to see faces in random patterns is common. But in last photos, these faces appear at rates higher than random chance would predict. And the faces often appear to be looking at the photographer. One psychologist studying this pattern said pareidolia is normal. We see faces everywhere because our brains are wired to recognize faces. But the frequency of face-like patterns in last photos from disappearances, and the fact that these faces appear to be oriented toward the photographer, suggests either pattern matching bias in analysis or something about these locations that creates face-like patterns intentionally. Some researchers believe the faces are marking or territorial displays. Others think they're coincidental patterns. We're overinterpreting. But families of missing people who've seen faces in the last photos of their loved ones find them deeply disturbing. Let's look at a case where a last video shows the subject receiving a call from their own phone number. In 2019, a hiker's video shows them answering their ringing phone. They look at the caller ID, and their face shows confusion. They say to the camera, "That's weird. My own number is calling me." They answer, "Hello?" Long pause, listening. Their expression changes to fear. How are you doing this? This isn't funny." Pause. "Stop saying that. You can't know that." The hiker's hands start shaking. "I'm hanging up." They end the call. They stare at the camera, clearly frightened. "Someone just called me from my own phone number, and they were saying things about me that no one should know. Things I've never told anyone." The hiker puts the phone away and starts walking quickly back toward the trailhead. The video continues showing the hiker walking, clearly disturbed. Then the phone rings again. The hiker pulls it out, looks at the screen. It's my number again. They answer, "Leave me alone." Whatever they hear makes them drop the phone. The video shows the phone falling, and we can hear a voice speaking from it. The voice sounds like the hiker's own voice, but wrong. Distorted, wrong pitch. Speaking in strange rhythms. The hiker runs, leaving the phone on the ground. The video continues recording the phone on the trail for several more minutes. The voice from the phone continues speaking, but the words aren't in English. Then the recording ends. The hiker was found days later, deceased, with their phone showing no record of any calls received that day. But the video clearly documents the calls and the disturbing voice. One telecommunications expert said spoofing caller ID to show your own number is technically possible, but having no record of the calls afterward and the voice exhibiting such strange qualities suggests something more complex was happening. Whether this was sophisticated hacking or something else, we can't determine. Now let's discuss a case where a photographer's camera contained photos of the future. In 2016, a photographer's camera was found containing images that hadn't happened yet when the camera was recovered. Photos showed search teams looking for the photographer, timestamped days before the search actually occurred. Photos showed the location where the photographer's body would be found, timestamped before the death occurred. Photos showed family members being notified of the death, timestamped impossibly early. When investigators compared these photos to what actually happened, They matched exactly. The search teams were in the photographed locations wearing the photographed clothing. The body was found in the photographed position. The family notifications happened as photographed. But all the photos were time-stamped before any of it occurred. One investigator said, either someone staged elaborate recreations of future events and manipulated timestamps, which would require impossible foreknowledge, or that camera somehow documented the future. Either explanation is deeply disturbing. The case has never been solved, and the photos remain unexplained. Let's talk about a case where a last video shows the subject having a conversation with someone they shouldn't be able to see. In 2018, a hiker recorded video while sitting at a campsite. The hiker appears to be alone, camera on a tripod, capturing them at the campfire. But the hiker is clearly talking to someone across the fire. I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure I believe it. Pause, as if listening to response. How can you prove that to me? Pause. Okay, I'm listening. The hiker's expression changes as they listen. That's not possible. You can't know that about me. Pause. Fine, show me then. The hiker stands and walks to a specific spot, clearly being directed by someone. They start digging in the dirt with their hands. After a few minutes, they pull something out. A small metal box, rusted and old. They open it, and their face goes pale. This is my grandmother's locket. I lost this when I was 6 years old. Here in these exact woods. How did you know it was here? Pause, listening. I don't understand. You're telling me you've been watching me since I was 6? That you've been here in these woods for decades? Pause. The hiker starts to look frightened. What do you want from me? Pause. No, I'm not doing that. The hiker backs away from the campfire. Stay away from me. They turn and run into the darkness beyond the firelight. The camera continues recording the empty campsite for hours. Eventually, dawn comes, and the campsite is undisturbed except for the open metal box. The hiker was never seen again. One analyst who viewed the video said that hiker was clearly interacting with someone they believed was present. Whether that entity was real or a hallucination, the hiker responded to it as if it were real. The box being exactly where the entity indicated suggests either remarkable coincidence or genuine knowledge of the hiker's past. Now let's discuss a case where last photos show the photographer de-aging instead of aging over the course of a day. In 2017, a hiker's photos show them at various times throughout a day hike. The early morning photos show the hiker looking their actual age, early 50s. But as the day progresses, photos show the hiker appearing younger. By midday, they appear to be in their 30s. By late afternoon, they look like they're in their 20s. The progression is visible, documented across sequential, time-stamped photos. The hiker appears to be aging backward, becoming younger as the day progresses. The final photo shows someone who appears to be in their late teens, barely recognizable as the person in the morning photos. The hiker was never found. One medical expert said, reverse aging isn't biologically possible. Yet these photos appear to document it. Either we're seeing elaborate makeup and deception, or something happened to this person that caused their appearance to change in ways that don't match any known process. Let's look at a case where a last video shows the subject splitting into two versions of themselves. In 2019, a hiker's video contains footage that appears impossible. The hiker is walking and narrating as usual. Then, at one point in the video, the image seems to shimmer. When it clears, there are two hikers visible. Both appear to be the same person, wearing the same clothes, moving in similar but not identical ways. One continues narrating to the camera. The other walks silently beside them. They occasionally glance at each other but don't interact. This continues for several minutes of video. Then they reach a fork in the trail. One version takes the left path. The other takes the right path. Both disappear from frame in different directions. The camera, apparently dropped or placed down, continues recording the empty trail fork for several more minutes before the recording ends. Neither version of the hiker was found. One physicist said, if that video is genuine, it documents something that violates everything we know about identity and physical law. You can't split into two separate instances. Yet the video appears to show exactly that. Now let's talk about a case where multiple last photos from different people contain the same impossible building in the background. Over a 3-year period, 6 different photographers in different wilderness areas captured photos containing a structure in the background. The structure appears to be a building, large and architectural, but with strange properties. It doesn't match any known building in any of the photographed locations. It appears in different wilderness areas, hundreds of miles apart. Yet it's clearly the same building in each photo, identifiable by distinctive architectural features. The building appears solid in some photos, translucent in others. In some photos it appears close, in others distant, regardless of actual terrain. And none of the photographers consciously saw the building when taking their photos. It was only noticed when reviewing images later. 4 of the 6 photographers who captured this building subsequently went missing. One researcher said that building appears in photos from locations where no building exists or could exist. It appears consistently across multiple photographers and locations. It seems to move or appear in different places, and photographing it correlates with disappearance. Whatever that structure is, it's not a normal building. Let's discuss a case where a last video's visual and audio became desynchronized in impossible ways. In 2018, a hiker's video shows their mouth moving, but the audio doesn't match. Not simple lag or sync error. The audio is words they haven't said yet. Their lips are forming words that occurred earlier in the video. The visual and audio are out of sync by minutes, not milliseconds. And the offset changes throughout the video, sometimes audio ahead, sometimes visual ahead. By the end of the video, the desynchronization is over 10 minutes. The audio is what the hiker will say 10 minutes in the future. The visual shows what the hiker did 10 minutes in the past. One video analyst said that desynchronization pattern is impossible with normal recording errors. The offset is too large and too variable. If the footage is genuine, it suggests temporal problems, that visual and audio information were being captured from different time points. The hiker was found deceased with unusual temporal distortions and tissue decomposition. Different parts of the body showed different stages of decay, as if they'd been dead for different lengths of time simultaneously. Now let's look at a case where a last photo shows the photographer's camera displaying an image of the photographer taking that same photo. In 2017, a photographer took a selfie that contains a recursive anomaly. The photo shows the photographer holding their camera. In the camera's display screen visible in the photo, you can see the image being captured. But the image in the camera screen shows the photographer taking the photo. And in that image, the camera screen shows the photographer taking the photo. And in that image, the camera screen shows the photographer taking the photo. The recursion continues for at least 7 visible iterations before becoming too small to resolve. It's an impossible infinite loop of the same moment photographing itself. One photo expert said that recursion can't exist in a single photograph. It suggests either elaborate digital manipulation or something about that moment of photographing created a temporal loop where the same moment fed back into itself repeatedly. The photographer went missing, and the photo is their last image. Let's talk about a case where a last video shows a subject apparently drowning on dry land. In 2019, a hiker recorded themselves in a forest, far from any water. In the video, the hiker suddenly appears to be struggling, gasping, flailing arms, looking upward as if underwater. Their expressions and movements exactly match drowning behavior. But they're standing on dry ground with no water present. The hiker appears to be drowning in air, experiencing water that isn't there. They collapse, still exhibiting drowning responses. The video continues recording them lying on the ground, not breathing, as if they've drowned. The hiker was found in that exact position. Medical examination confirmed drowning as cause of death. Their lungs contained water, but they died miles from any water source, on dry land. One medical examiner said the cause of death is definitely drowning. There's water in the lungs, tissue damage consistent with drowning, all the markers, but they died in a location with no water. Either they aspirated water they carried with them, which seems unlikely given the volume, or something impossible happened. The video documents someone drowning in an environment where drowning shouldn't be possible. Now let's discuss a disturbing case, where a last photo appears to show the photographer's death from the perspective of their eyes. In 2016, a camera was found with a final photo that's deeply unsettling. The photo shows what appears to be the photographer's own hands reaching up toward the camera, as if the photographer was holding the camera at face level when something grabbed them. The hands in the image appear to be the photographer's own hands, but the angle suggests they're reaching toward their own face. The photo captures the impossible perspective of someone being grabbed by themselves. One investigator said that photo doesn't make geometric sense. The perspective suggests the camera is at eye level, but the hands approaching it are at the wrong angle to be someone else's hands. They appear to be the photographer's own hands, reaching for their own face. It's like photographing your own attack by yourself. The photographer was found deceased nearby, with injuries suggesting they'd fought with someone. But evidence suggested they'd been alone when they died, as if they'd fought and been killed by themselves, impossible as that seems. Let's look at a case where multiple photographers' last photos show writing that appears in the sky. Over a 6-month period in 2018, 4 different photographers in one region captured photos showing symbols or writing in the sky, not clouds forming letter shapes. Actual dark marks or symbols visible against the sky. The symbols don't match any known language or writing system, but they're clearly deliberate, too organized and geometric to be natural formations. Each photographer who captured these sky symbols subsequently went missing, and the symbols appear to change over time, as if a message is being written progressively. One linguist studying the symbols said, "Those marks are structured like language. They have consistent elements, patterns that suggest grammar or syntax, repetitions that suggest meaning, but they don't match any writing system we've documented. And the fact that they're appearing in the sky, captured by cameras, but apparently not visible to naked eye observation, suggests they exist in a spectral range cameras can detect, but humans can't perceive." Now let's discuss a case where last video shows the subject walking through a wall of trees as if they weren't solid. In 2019, a hiker's video shows them walking toward a dense stand of trees. The trees are close together, no visible gap to walk through. But the hiker continues walking directly toward the trees. As they reach the tree line, instead of stopping, they appear to walk through the trees as if the trees weren't there. The video shows the hiker's form becoming obscured by tree trunks, but they don't slow or turn. They appear to pass through solid wood. Then they're visible on the other side, continuing to walk as if nothing unusual happened. The video continues for a few more minutes, showing the hiker moving deeper into impossible terrain. Then the recording stops. The hiker was never found. One physicist said, "That video appears to show someone passing through solid matter. That's impossible. Matter is impenetrable. Either the video is manipulated, which forensic analysis doesn't support, or we're seeing something that violates basic physics." Let's talk about a case where a last photo contains light that's the wrong color for any natural source. In 2017, a photographer's final image shows a forest scene illuminated by light that analysis reveals is wrong. The light has wavelengths that don't occur in sunlight, moonlight, or any known artificial light source. It's light that shouldn't exist according to the visible spectrum. We understand. One optical physicist said, "The light in that photo has properties that don't match any natural or artificial source. The wavelength distribution is anomalous. It's light, it's illuminating the scene, but it's not light as we normally define it." The photographer went missing, and their body was later found with unusual radiation exposure. Not harmful radiation levels, but exposure to wavelengths that don't normally exist in nature. As if they've been exposed to the same impossible light that their camera captured. Now let's look at a case where a last video shows the subject aging, dying, and decaying in real time over the course of minutes. In 2018, a hiker's video contains footage too disturbing for most people to watch completely. The hiker appears normal at the start. But as the video progresses, they begin to age rapidly. Within minutes, they appear decades older. Their skin wrinkles, their hair grays, their body weakens visibly. They collapse, and the video continues recording as they appear to die. Then, even more disturbing, their body begins to decay in accelerated fashion. Decomposition that should take weeks happens in minutes, visible in the video. By the end of the video, only bones remain. The entire process from living person to skeleton happens in less than 30 minutes of video. One medical expert who viewed the footage said, "If that video is genuine and unmanipulated, it documents biological processes happening at speeds that are impossible. Aging, death, and decay all have minimum timeframes based on cellular biology and chemical processes. What's shown in that video violates all of those constraints." The remains found matched the skeleton visible in the final frames of the video. But the remains showed signs of normal decomposition that would take weeks, not the accelerated decay the video shows, as if the person experienced time differently than their surroundings. Let's discuss a final case, where a last photo contains an image of the camera itself from an external perspective. In 2019, a photographer took what would be their final photo. The image shows a landscape scene, normal composition, but in one corner of the frame, reflected in nothing, with no mirror or reflective surface present. There's an image of the camera and photographer from behind, as if someone was standing behind the photographer, photographing them taking the photo, and that external view somehow appeared in the photographer's own image. It's an impossible perspective that shouldn't exist in the photo. One photo expert said that secondary image can't be there. There's no optical path that would create it, no reflection, no lens artifact, nothing that explains an external view of the photographer appearing in their own photograph. It's like the photo contains information from a perspective that shouldn't be accessible. The photographer disappeared, and this impossible photo is all that remains. As we reach the end of this exhaustive examination of last photos and videos, we must confront what all this evidence collectively suggests. These aren't random coincidences or easily explained anomalies. These are systematic patterns documented in the final images of hundreds of people who disappeared or died under unexplained circumstances. The photographic evidence shows Reality warping in ways that suggest space and time don't function normally in these situations. Entities or presences that cameras can capture, but that human consciousness doesn't always perceive. Temporal distortions where time flows differently for different observers or objects. Impossible perspectives and recursive imagery that shouldn't be capturable. Physical laws being violated in documented, measurable ways. Manipulation of human consciousness and behavior through means we don't understand. Evidence of surveillance and predation by something with capabilities beyond normal. The accumulation of this photographic evidence makes it impossible to dismiss these cases as simple misfortune or misunderstanding. Something is happening that cameras document better than human testimony. Something that leaves traces in images even when it avoids other detection. Something that operates in ways that challenge our fundamental understanding of reality. The last photos and videos before unexplained disappearances are evidence that cannot be ignored. They're objective records showing that the world doesn't always work the way we think it does. That wilderness areas contain phenomena we don't comprehend. That people who venture into these areas sometimes encounter something that exists outside our normal frameworks. The cameras have shown us truth. Truth that's disturbing, incomprehensible, and undeniable. Truth preserved in pixels and frames, waiting for us to develop the understanding necessary to interpret it. Until then, these images serve as warnings. Documentation that something is happening that we need to take seriously. Evidence that people who take photos in wilderness sometimes capture their own disappearance in progress. And reminders that every photograph might be your last. Sleep now with this complete examination of disturbing last photos and videos, fresh in your mind. May you never take a photo that becomes evidence of your disappearance. May your images always document safe experiences and happy returns. May you never become a case where investigators examine your final photographs, trying to understand what happened to you in those captured moments. The evidence has been presented. The patterns are documented. The impossibilities are photographed. The truth is preserved in images, even if we can't fully understand what that truth means. The cameras don't lie. They show us reality as it actually is, not as we expect it to be. And sometimes, reality is far stranger and more disturbing than we want to acknowledge. Good night. May your photographs tell only stories of beauty and safety. May you never capture images that can't be explained. May you never experience what those in these last photos experienced in their final moments. The last photos have shown us everything they can. The rest is up to us to understand and heed. Sleep well. And remember, the camera sees everything. The mysteries remain. The evidence persists. And the last photos continue to accumulate, one after another, year after year, documenting disappearances, preserving impossibilities, showing us truth we're not ready to accept. But there are still more disturbing cases that need to be examined, more photographic evidence that demands our attention. Let's talk about a case where a photographer's camera continued taking photos long after the photographer should have been physically unable to operate it. In 2014, a wildlife photographer went missing in Yellowstone National Park. The photographer's camera was found weeks later, still containing battery power. The photos on the camera tell a disturbing story. The early photos show normal wildlife photography, the photographer's intended subject matter. Then photos of the photographer themselves, taken at arm's length, showing increasing distress. Photos showing injuries, the photographer clearly in pain. Then photos showing the photographer lying on the ground, unmoving, apparently deceased. But the photos continue. Hundreds more photos taken over days after the photographer appears to have died. Photos of the body from different angles, as if someone was documenting it. Photos of the surrounding area, systematic documentation of the location. Photos of weather changes, day and night cycles, wildlife approaching the body. The metadata confirms these photos were taken over a week-long period after the photographer's apparent death, who was operating the camera after the photographer died. One investigator said, those photos document a week of activity after we believe the photographer died. Either someone else found the body and used the camera extensively without reporting it, which seems unlikely and disturbing, or something else was operating that camera. The systematic nature of the photos, the complete documentation of the scene from multiple angles over days, suggests purpose and intelligence. The photographer's body was eventually found, and time of death estimates matched the photos showing them deceased. But no explanation exists for who took the hundreds of photos afterward. Now let's discuss a case where last photos show locations that don't exist in our geography. In 2015, a hiker's camera contained photos of places that cartographers and geologists say shouldn't exist. Rock formations with impossible geometry. Rivers flowing in directions that violate basic hydraulics. Mountain peaks in areas that topographic maps show as flat. Forests with tree species that don't grow in that climate or hemisphere. The GPS coordinates embedded in the photos place them in the area where the hiker disappeared. But when search teams went to those exact coordinates, the locations looked nothing like the photos. The rock formations weren't there. The rivers didn't exist. The mountains weren't present. The forest was completely different species. One geologist examining the photos said, "These images show real places. They're not computer-generated or artificial, but they're not places that exist at the coordinates the camera recorded. Either the GPS was malfunctioning in very specific ways, or these photos document locations that exist somewhere other than where the camera believed it was." The hiker was never found in our geography. Perhaps they found their way to wherever these impossible locations actually exist. Let's look at a case where a last video shows the subject receiving instructions from their future self. In 2016, a hiker recorded video showing them having a video call on their phone. The person on the other end of the call appears to be the hiker themselves, but older. The future version is giving warnings and instructions. Don't go past the creek. That's where it happens. When you see the red markers, turn back immediately. You have 3 hours. After that, you won't be able to leave. The hiker in the video is clearly disturbed by this call from their apparent future self. This is impossible. How are you, me? The future version responds, "I'm calling from 6 weeks ahead. I survived what you're about to experience, but I'm trapped here now. I can't get back. I can only warn you, don't make the mistakes I made." The hiker asks, "What happens if I don't listen?" The future version's face shows anguish.
You become me.
Trapped in a time loop trying to warn your past self over and over. "I've made this call 17 times now. You never listen. Please, this time, listen." The hiker appears to be taking it seriously. "Okay, I'm turning back now." But the video shows them continuing deeper into the forest, not turning back. As if they couldn't control their movements despite wanting to. The future version on the phone says, "You're not turning back. You're still going forward. Why won't your body obey you?" The hiker's voice panicked. "I'm trying. I want to turn around, but my legs keep walking this direction." The call ends. The hiker continues walking involuntarily, clearly trying to stop but unable to. The video shows them fighting against their own movements, trying to grab onto trees to stop but continuing to move forward. Then the video ends. The hiker was never found. But 6 weeks after this video was recorded, several hikers in that area reported receiving strange video calls from someone claiming to be trapped and trying to warn them. One researcher said, if that video call was genuine, it documents closed time loop causality, the hiker calling their past self from a trapped future state. The fact that the hiker couldn't control their movements suggests they were being compelled to fulfill the loop, to become the future self who would make that call. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy documented in video. Now let's discuss a case where multiple photographers' last photos all show the same elderly woman who no one can identify. Between 2013 and 2019, 16 different photographers in different locations captured images containing an elderly woman. The woman appears in the background of photos, sometimes close, sometimes distant. She's always wearing the same clothing, a long dark dress that appears outdated. She's always standing still, never mid-movement, as if she appeared just for the photo. She's always looking directly at the camera, regardless of angle or composition. And none of the photographers consciously saw her when taking their photos. 11 of the 16 photographers who captured this woman subsequently went missing or died under unusual circumstances. Attempts to identify the woman have failed. She doesn't match any missing persons reports. No one recognizes her from the photos. She appears ageless across the photos, spanning 6 years. One investigator said that woman appears in 16 different photos from different photographers across 6 years and multiple states. She's always wearing the same clothes, always looking at the camera, always standing in the same distinctive posture, but no one knows who she is. She's like a marker or herald, appearing in photos before disappearances occur. Some researchers believe she's a harbinger, appearing as a warning before tragedy. Others think she's connected to whatever causes the disappearances, perhaps documenting victims. Still others believe the photos are capturing something that exists between dimensions, visible to cameras, but not to human perception. The woman continues to appear in photographs, always watching, always present when something bad is about to happen. Let's talk about a case where a last video shows the subject discovering their own grave. In 2017, a hiker recorded video while exploring an abandoned cemetery in the woods. The hiker was interested in historical grave sites and old pioneer cemeteries. The video shows them examining various headstones, reading inscriptions, documenting the old cemetery. Then they come to a newer-looking headstone that stops them cold. The headstone has their own name on it. Their full name, including middle name, that's not commonly known. The birth date matches their actual birth date exactly. But there's also a death date 3 days in the future from when the video was recorded. The hiker's voice shaking. This has my name. My exact name and birthday. What the hell is this? They examine the headstone closely, running their hands over the engraving. This stone is real. It's not a prank. The engraving is weathered like it's been here for years, but the death date is 3 days from now. This is insane. The hiker films the headstone extensively, documenting every detail. They try to find evidence that it's a hoax, looking for seams or fakery. But the headstone appears completely genuine, consistent with the other graves in the cemetery. The hiker decides to leave. I'm getting out of here. This is too weird. The video shows them hiking back toward their car, clearly disturbed. But they have trouble finding the trail they came in on. They walk in circles, becoming increasingly disoriented. Where's the trail? I came from this direction. I'm sure of it. Hours pass in the video, the hiker lost in the forest, near the cemetery. As darkness falls, they become panicked. My phone has no signal. I can't get GPS. I don't know which direction to go. They decide to stay near the cemetery until morning, since it's at least a clearing. The video shows them sitting against a tree near the cemetery, watching the darkness. Strange sounds come from the forest around them. Footsteps circling in the darkness. Voices whispering in the distance. The hiker doesn't sleep, too frightened. As dawn approaches, they stand to start walking at first light. But they look at the cemetery and freeze. Oh God, there's a fresh grave that wasn't there yesterday. The video shows a newly dug grave with fresh dirt right next to the headstone with the hiker's name. The grave is open, waiting. The hiker runs. The video shows panicked running through the forest, branches hitting the camera, heavy breathing. Then a cry of pain as the hiker trips. The sound of a body tumbling down a slope. Then silence. The camera landed facing up, showing tree canopy. For hours the camera records only that static view. Then movement in frame. Hands appear, picking up the camera. The hands are wrong, too pale, fingers too long. The camera is carried back toward the cemetery. The video shows the open grave getting closer. Then the camera is tossed into the grave. The video shows the view from inside the grave. Looking up, dirt begins falling in, covering the lens. The video ends. 3 days later, the date on the headstone, search teams found the hiker's body. In the cemetery. In the grave that had been waiting. One investigator said that video documents someone discovering their own prepared grave 3 days before they died. The headstone was real and weathered, suggesting it had been there for years, despite having a future death date. Then the person died on exactly the date carved in stone, and was buried in the grave that was already there. It suggests predestination, that their death was predetermined and prepared for. The video documents them walking into their own arranged fate. Now let's discuss a case where a photographer's last photos show their own reflection, but the reflection is doing different things than the photographer. In 2018, a photographer took photos near a large mirror-like rock face created by mineral deposits. The surface was reflective enough to show clear reflections. The photographer took several photos that included their reflection. But in each photo, the reflection is doing something different than the photographer. In one photo, the photographer is standing still, but the reflection is waving. In another, the photographer is facing forward, but the reflection is turned sideways. In another, the photographer has their arms down, but the reflection has arms raised. The progression suggests the reflection was acting independently, with its own will. The final photo shows the photographer looking at their reflection in apparent horror. And the reflection is smiling. A smile the photographer isn't making. The photographer went missing that day. Weeks later, hikers in that area reported seeing someone matching the photographer's description. But when they approached, the person seemed wrong. Moved wrong, spoke with wrong inflections, had expressions that seemed forced and unnatural. As if someone was trying to be the photographer, but didn't quite know how to act human convincingly. One witness said, they looked like the missing photographer, same face, same build, but something was off. The way they moved was jerky, mechanical. Their smile didn't reach their eyes. It was like watching someone wear another person's body, but not knowing quite how to operate it. The photographer was never found. But the reflection that acted independently may have found a way out of the mirror. Let's look at a case where a last video shows the subject entering a fog bank and never emerging. In 2019, a hiker recorded video approaching a fog bank in the mountains. The fog was unusual, appearing suddenly in a localized area. Perfectly white, perfectly opaque, with sharply defined edges. Not like natural fog which dissipates gradually. This was like a wall of white. The hiker approached it cautiously, filming. This is weird. Fog doesn't usually have such sharp boundaries. It's like a wall. They reached out and touched the fog. Their hand disappeared into it, invisible in the white. They pulled their hand back, examining it. That felt strange. Cold, but not normal cold. They decided to walk into the fog. I'm going to walk through it. It's probably just 30 feet deep. I'll be on the other side in a minute. The video shows them stepping into the fog. Immediately, everything becomes white. No visibility, complete whiteout. The hiker's voice, I can't see anything. Completely white. Can't even see my hand in front of my face. Sounds of footsteps. The hiker walking through the fog. This continues for several minutes. The hiker becomes concerned, I should be through this by now. It looked like a small fog bank. I've been walking for 5 minutes. More walking. Okay, this doesn't make sense. I'm going to turn around and go back the way I came. The sounds of the hiker turning and walking in the opposite direction. After several more minutes, I should be out by now. What is this? The hiker's voice becoming panicked. I've been walking for 15 minutes. This fog can't be this big. More walking, increasingly frantic. Is anyone there? Can anyone hear me? The hiker's voice echoing strangely in the fog. Hello? Help. The video continues for over an hour, showing only white, recording the hiker's growing panic as they walk endlessly through fog that never ends. Eventually, exhaustion in their voice. I don't understand. I've been walking for over an hour. I should have reached the edge in any direction. Where am I? The hiker sits down, breathing heavily. I need to conserve energy. Think this through. Silence for several minutes. Then the hiker speaks quietly. There's something in here with me. I can hear it moving. Sounds of something large, moving through the fog. Not footsteps, but something dragging or sliding. The hiker whispers, it's getting closer. The sound intensifies, circling the hiker's position. The hiker stands, backing away from the sound. But the sound is everywhere, coming from all directions. The hiker screams. Then the sound of a struggle, the camera dropping, showing only white. Strange sounds, difficult to identify. Then silence. The camera continues recording white fog for hours. Eventually, the battery dies. The hiker was never found. Search teams found the camera at the edge of a small fog bank, exactly where the hiker entered. But the hiker wasn't there. The fog was only 20 feet deep. Yet the video shows the hiker walking for over an hour without emerging, encountering something in the fog, and vanishing. One investigator said that fog was like a doorway, small on this side, but the video suggests infinite space inside. The hiker walked for over an hour in a fog bank that was 20 feet deep. They encountered something that attacked them. Then they ceased to exist in our space. The fog was an entrance to somewhere else. Now let's discuss a case where last photos show a progression of the photographer transforming into something else. In 2016, a solo hiker took selfies throughout a multi-day backpacking trip. The early photos show them looking normal, healthy, human. But as the photo sequence progresses, subtle changes appear. By day 2, their eyes look different, darker, with pupils that seem too large. By day 3, their skin has a strange texture, almost scale-like in certain light. By day 4, their proportions appear slightly wrong, limbs seeming longer. By day 5, they're barely recognizable, features distorted in ways that suggest they're becoming something non-human. The final selfie shows something that's more creature than person, looking at the camera with intelligence but not humanity. The hiker was never found. But locals in that area have reported seeing a creature in the woods that matches the appearance in that final photo. Tall, vaguely humanoid, but wrong in fundamental ways. Moving through the forest, watching hikers, but never approaching. One biologist who examined the photo sequence said, if these images are genuine and show the same individual, they document a transformation that isn't biologically possible. The changes aren't makeup or effects. The bone structure itself appears to be changing between photos. Either we're seeing elaborate hoaxing, or something happened to that person that changed them at a fundamental level into something no longer human. Let's talk about a case where a last video shows the subject being pulled upward by something invisible. In 2017, a hiker was recording while walking a trail. The video shows normal hiking for about 20 minutes. Then suddenly, the hiker stops mid-step. What's I feel? The hiker looks up. Something's pulling me. The camera shows the hiker's feet lifting off the ground. Not jumping, not stepping, but being lifted. The hiker is rising into the air, feet dangling. What's happening? What's pulling me? The hiker is clearly terrified, flailing, trying to grab onto trees as they pass. The camera shows ground getting further away. The hiker is being pulled upward rapidly, ascending through the forest canopy. Help! Someone help me! The camera shows tree branches passing, the hiker being pulled higher and higher. Then they break through the canopy into open sky. The camera shows the forest falling away below, the hiker ascending hundreds of feet. The hiker is screaming. Then abruptly, the pulling stops. The hiker hangs motionless in midair, impossibly suspended. The camera shows them looking around in terror and confusion. What's holding me? I can't see anything. There's nothing here. For several seconds, the hiker floats hundreds of feet above the forest. Then the invisible force releases. The hiker begins to fall. The camera captures the fall, spinning, showing sky and ground alternating. The sound of wind rushing past. The hikers scream. Then impact. The camera survives the fall, cracked, but functional. The final frames show the hiker's broken body on the forest floor. Then the camera's lens is covered by something, going dark, sounds of movement, something large near the camera. Then silence. Hours later, the camera was found by search teams. But the hiker's body was gone, despite the video clearly showing it on the ground where the camera was found. One investigator said that video documents someone being physically lifted hundreds of feet into the air by an invisible force, suspended, then dropped. The fall was captured. The body on impact was visible, but when we arrived at that location, there was no body. Something removed it between the video ending and our arrival. Now let's discuss a case where multiple photographers' last images all contain the same symbols drawn in blood. Over an 18-month period in Oregon, 7 photographers went missing. All 7 cameras were recovered. Each camera's final photo showed symbols drawn on trees, rocks, or ground in what appeared to be blood. The symbols were identical across all 7 cases. Complex geometric patterns, unlike any known writing system. Fresh when photographed, the blood still wet and bright. But when search teams arrived at the photographed locations, the symbols were gone. No trace of blood, no marks on the surfaces that had been marked. As if the symbols existed only for the photographers at specific moments, visible only in time to be photographed, then vanishing. One researcher said 7 photographers, 18 months, identical blood symbols that photograph, but then vanish. The symbols themselves appear to be communication or warnings, written in blood, appearing temporarily. Are they being shown these symbols as a message before disappearing? Or are the photographers being used to document something that exists in a state we can't normally perceive? Let's look at a case where a last video's audio contains 2 conversations happening simultaneously but separately. In 2018, a hiker's final video, audio is deeply unsettling when analyzed. On first listening, you hear the hiker narrating their hike normally. But audio analysis reveals a second conversation layered underneath. 2 other voices, having a discussion about the hiker. The voices are quiet, almost subliminal, but definitely present. Voice 1, this one is ready. Voice 2, the timing is correct. Voice 1, yes. The convergence happens in 43 minutes. Voice 2, and the preparation. Voice 1 complete. They've been guided to the location. Voice 2, resistance expected. Voice 1, minimal. They don't understand what's happening yet. The conversation continues under the hiker's narration, discussing the hiker as if they're a subject in an experiment or ritual. The hiker appears unaware of these voices, continuing to narrate normally about the scenery and hike. Exactly 43 minutes after those voices mention the convergence, the hiker's video shows them arriving at a clearing where they encounter something. The video becomes chaotic, shows brief flashes of something large and impossible, then ends. The hiker was never found. One audio forensics expert said those voices are definitely present in the recording. They're discussing the hiker with foreknowledge of what's going to happen. Either someone planted these audio tracks as a hoax, which seems incredibly elaborate and purposeless, or we're hearing something that was present in that environment, discussing the hiker's fate while the hiker remained unaware. Now let's talk about a case where a photographer's last images show them in a location they couldn't have reached. In 2015, a photographer went on a day hike in Colorado. The photographer's last photo shows them standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon in Arizona, not a similar-looking canyon in Colorado. The actual Grand Canyon, identifiable by distinctive rock formations and landmarks. The metadata confirms the photo was taken during the time window when the photographer was on their Colorado hike. The distance between the Colorado Trail and the Grand Canyon rim is over 600 miles. There's no way the photographer could have traveled that distance during their day hike. Yet the photo clearly shows them at the Grand Canyon, time-stamped during their Colorado hike. One investigator said that photo is genuine, taken with their camera during the day they were hiking in Colorado, but it shows them in Arizona, 600 miles away. Either the photographer somehow traveled that distance impossibly quickly, or they experienced a spatial displacement, ending up in Arizona while believing they were still in Colorado, or something even stranger involving multiple locations existing simultaneously. The photographer was found deceased in Colorado, on their intended hiking trail. but the photo of them at the Grand Canyon remains unexplained. Let's discuss a case where a last video shows the subject receiving a package delivery in the middle of wilderness. In 2019, a hiker was recording while taking a break on a remote trail. The video shows them sitting and eating, nothing unusual. Then a person walks into frame, carrying a package. The person is wearing a delivery uniform, as if they're a courier. In the middle of wilderness, miles from any road, the hiker looks confused. Are you lost? The delivery person, package for hiker's full name. The hiker. What? How did you? We're in the middle of nowhere. How did you know I'm here? The delivery person, signature required. They hand the hiker an electronic signing pad. The hiker, bewildered, signs. The delivery person hands over a package, turns, and walks away. The hiker calls after them. Wait, how did you get here? Where are you going? The delivery person doesn't respond, walking into the forest and out of frame. The hiker looks at the package, turning it over. This has my name and today's date, but the return address is this doesn't make sense. The hiker opens the package. Inside is a photo. The hiker pulls it out, and their face goes pale. This is a photo of me, right now, sitting here opening this package. The video shows the hiker holding a photo that appears to show this exact moment. The hiker in the photo is holding the photo in an infinite regression. What the hell? How can this photo exist? I just opened it. When was this taken? The hiker examines the photo closely. There's something written on the back. They flip it over and read, "Turn around." The hiker slowly turns to look behind them. The video catches a glimpse of something massive in the trees before the camera cuts to black. Not battery death, but abrupt termination, as if the camera was crushed. The hiker was never found. The package, photo, and delivery person all vanished as if they never existed. One investigator said, that video shows an impossible delivery happening in a location no delivery service could access. The photo inside was of a future moment that hadn't happened yet when the package was delivered. The whole event suggests manipulation of causality, delivering information from the future to set up the hiker's encounter with something in the forest. Now let's look at a case where multiple last photos from different people show them standing in the same spot at the same time, despite being taken months apart. 5 different photographers over an 8-month period took photos in one particular area of wilderness in Montana. Each photographer took a selfie at what appeared to be the same location. When the photos were compared after all 5 photographers had gone missing, investigators noticed something impossible. The backgrounds of all 5 selfies are identical. Not similar, much identical. The same clouds, the same lighting, the same positions of sun shadows. As if all 5 photos were taken at the same moment. But the metadata shows they were taken months apart. One in January, one in March, one in May, one in July, one in September. Different seasons, different weather patterns, yet identical environmental conditions in the photos. And in each photo, if you look very carefully at the background, you can see the other 4 photographers. Tiny figures, barely visible, but present. All 5 people appear in all 5 photos, despite the photos being taken months apart. One photo analyst said, those 5 photos show 5 different people in the same location, at the same moment, but the photos were taken across 8 months. Either we're dealing with 5 people who somehow converge on the same moment in time from different months, or that location exists outside normal time, where different temporal periods can coexist and interact. All 5 photographers remain missing. Let's talk about a case where a last video shows the subject encountering their own dead body. In 2016, a hiker was recording while exploring an area off-trail. The video shows them pushing through dense forest, looking for a good viewpoint. They come into a small clearing and freeze. Oh my God. The camera pans to show a body lying on the ground. The hiker approaches slowly. Is that person okay? Hello? They get closer and the camera captures clear footage of the body. The body is wearing the exact clothes the hiker is wearing. The same jacket, same pants, same boots. The hiker. Those are my clothes. That looks like... They crouch down next to the body. The body's face is visible. It's the hiker's face. The hiker is looking at their own corpse. This is me. This is my body. How is this possible? The hiker is hyperventilating, panicking. I'm not dead. I'm right here. How can I be looking at my own dead body? They reach out to touch the body. As their hand makes contact, the body's eyes snap open. The corpse looks directly at the hiker. The corpse's mouth moves. You're too late. It already happened. The hiker screams and runs. The video shows frantic running through the forest. Then the hiker trips and falls. The camera lands pointing back the direction they came. The corpse is standing in the clearing, looking toward the camera. Then it starts walking toward the camera. Slow, methodical steps. The hiker scrambles to their feet and runs. The video continues showing the chase, the corpse pursuing relentlessly. Eventually, exhaustion overtakes the hiker. They collapse, unable to run further. The corpse catches up, standing over the camera. The corpse reaches down. The video ends. The hiker was found dead in that clearing, in the exact position where their body had been lying in the video, as if the corpse they encountered was their own future death, and encountering it made it real. One physicist said, that video suggests closed causal loops, where the hiker encountered their own death from the future, and that encounter caused the death to occur. Time folding back on itself, effect becoming cause. It's theoretically possible in some models of quantum mechanics, but shouldn't be possible in macroscopic reality. Now let's discuss a disturbing pattern, where last photos often contain shadows pointing in impossible directions. Researchers examining thousands of final photos have noticed that shadows frequently don't match the sun position. In many last photos, shadows fall in directions that require the sun to be in positions it couldn't occupy. Multiple shadows at different angles, suggesting multiple light sources when only one sun is present. Shadows that point toward the sun instead of away from it. Shadows that are darker and more defined than the ambient light would create. One optical physicist said shadows in these photos violate basic optics. Shadows form opposite the light source. Multiple distinct shadows require multiple light sources, but these photos show impossible shadow configurations with only one sun. Either something is manipulating light in these locations, or the photos are capturing light from sources we can't see. The frequency of impossible shadows in last photos suggests something about these disappearance locations affects how light behaves, or something is present that casts shadows without casting visible form. Let's look at a case where a last video shows the subject aging backwards and forwards rapidly and repeatedly. In 2017, a hiker's video shows them experiencing rapid and random age changes. One moment they appear to be in their 20s. The next moment, elderly, age 70 or more. Then middle-aged. Then a teenager. Then elderly again. The changes happen every few seconds throughout a 10-minute video. Their appearance cycles through different ages randomly and rapidly. They appear aware of it, looking at their hands in confusion as they wrinkle and smooth repeatedly. What's happening to me? Why do I keep changing? Their voice changes with their appearance, young and strong when they appear young, weak and reedy when elderly. By the end of the video, the changes are happening faster, multiple times per second. Their form almost blurring between ages. Then the video ends. The hiker was found deceased, and medical examination revealed something impossible. Different parts of their body were different ages. Their heart was that of a 20-year-old. Their liver showed age consistent with 70 years. Their brain tissue suggested a 40-year-old. Their bones showed teenage growth patterns, as if their body couldn't settle on one age and ended up as a patchwork of different biological ages. One medical examiner said, "This person's body contains tissues at completely different stages of aging. It's impossible. Cells age together, coordinated by biological clocks, but this person's cells aged independently, randomly, creating a body that's simultaneously multiple ages." The video documents this happening in real time. Now let's talk about a case where a photographer's last images contain figures that move between frames, even though the camera was on a tripod. In 2018, a photographer set up a tripod and took a series of long exposure shots of the night sky. The camera was locked in position, not moving between shots. But in the sequence of images, figures appear and move through the frame. Not stars or satellites, but humanoid shapes visible against the trees at the bottom of each frame. In the first image, 3 figures stand at the left edge. In the second image, taken 30 seconds later, they're in the center. In the third image, they're at the right edge. In the fourth image, they're gone. But now 5 figures stand where the first 3 had been. The progression continues through 20 images, figures appearing, moving, disappearing, multiplying. Always humanoid, always in the tree line, always seeming to be watching the camera. The photographer was found near the tripod location, dead from no apparent cause. Medical examination found no injuries, no health issues. No explanation for death. They simply died as if their life was switched off. One investigator said, "Those photos show entities moving through the scene, captured over the course of an hour." The photographer was alone setting up these shots. By the end of the sequence, dozens of figures surround the camera position. Shortly after, the photographer dies from no cause. The correlation suggests the figures weren't benign observers, but were there with malicious intent. Let's discuss a case where a last video shows the subject receiving a phone call from a date in the past. In 2019, A hiker's phone rang while they were recording. They answered. Hello? The voice on the other end was their own voice, but their past self calling from a specific date 3 years earlier. The hiker's face showed shock. This is impossible. I remember this day. This is me 3 years ago, making this call. The voice, I know this doesn't make sense, but I'm calling to warn you. In 3 years, you'll be on a hiking trail. Don't go, please, don't go. The hiker, but I'm already here. I'm on that trail now. How can you warn me about something that's already happening? The voice. Time isn't working right? I'm calling from then. You're receiving it now, but it's all the same moment somehow. Please, turn back. Don't go to the clearing. The hiker. What happens in the clearing? The voice. I don't know. I never got there. I turned back because of this call, but you're not me anymore. You made a different choice. You kept going. The hiker. If you turn back and I'm you, how am I still here? The voice. We split. You're the version that kept going. I'm the version that turned back. But I can feel you dying. When you die, I'll die too. We're still connected. Please, save us both. Turn back. The hiker looked at the trail ahead, then back toward the trailhead. They made their choice. I'm gonna see what's in the clearing. I need to know. The voice, no. Please. But the hiker hung up and continued forward. The video shows them walking toward a clearing, visible ahead. As they enter the clearing, the video distorts. Colors inverted, shapes warping, sound becoming mechanical and wrong. The last frame is completely corrupted, a mess of digital artifacts and noise. The hiker was found in that clearing, dead, with no clear cause. But 3 days after the death, police received a call from the hiker's phone number. The voice, I tried to warn myself, but I didn't listen. Now we're both gone. If you're hearing this, I'm calling from a timeline that no longer exists, reaching out one last time before everything ends. The clearing takes everyone eventually. No one should go there. Then the line went dead. One physicist said, that call represents branching timelines, the hiker splitting into versions that made different choices. One version turned back and called to warn the other. But the version that preceded died, and that death propagated back to affect the version that had survived. Quantum entanglement at a consciousness level, creating a shared fate across timeline branches. Now let's look at a case where last photos show the same impossible structure that appears to be built from the photographers themselves. 3 photographers in Wyoming over 2 years all captured the same strange structure. A tower-like construction in a remote area, made of organic material that looked disturbingly like human bodies. Arms, legs, torsos, woven together to create a structure about 12 feet tall. The structure wasn't there when searchers arrived at the locations, but all 3 photographers captured clear images of it. And when the images were enhanced, investigators made a horrifying discovery. The bodies making up the structure matched the 3 photographers who'd taken the photos. Their own bodies were part of the structure, even though they were alive when they took the photos. It was as if the structure existed in the future, built from people who would later vanish, and the photos were capturing that future state bleeding back into the present. All 3 photographers vanished. Their bodies were never found, but hikers in that area occasionally report seeing the structure. Always briefly, always distant, always gone when approached. And with each sighting, the structure appears larger, as if it's still being built, more bodies added over time. One researcher said, those photos show a structure made from the photographers themselves, captured before they disappeared. It suggests their fates were predetermined, their bodies destined to become part of this impossible construction. The structure may exist in the future or in another dimension, occasionally becoming visible in our present. Let's talk about a case where our last video shows the subject's dialogue being spoken by someone else's voice. In 2016, a hiker recorded themselves while hiking. But in the video, the voice coming from their mouth isn't their voice. It's someone else's voice. A stranger's voice. Speaking through the hiker. The hiker's lips match the words, but the voice is wrong. And the words themselves are disturbing. They're coming for this one soon. The collection continues. So many have been brought here. The hiker appears unaware that they're speaking these words. They continue hiking normally, occasionally commenting on the scenery. But those comments come in their normal voice. It's as if 2 voices are alternating, speaking through the hiker. Their own voice. Beautiful view from here. The other voice, the harvest will be complete within the cycle. Their own voice. Getting tired. Should rest soon. The other voice, resistance is irrelevant. The destination is fixed. This continues throughout the video, the 2 voices, alternating. Family who saw the video were disturbed. That other voice wasn't them, someone else was speaking through them, and they didn't seem to realize it. The hiker disappeared, and the final words in the video came from the other voice. Arrival imminent, processing will begin. One psychologist said, that video suggests either shared consciousness, where another entity was speaking through the hiker's body, or the hiker's own subconscious manifesting as a separate voice, revealing knowledge they shouldn't have. Either interpretation is deeply unsettling. Now let's discuss a case where multiple photographers' last images all contain the same clock, showing 11:11. Over a 3-year period, 9 photographers went missing in different locations. 8 of the 9 cameras were recovered. In 7 of those 8, the final photo contained a clock somewhere in the image showing 11:11. Not coincidental timing of when the photo was taken, but physical clocks in the environment, captured in the background or foreground, all showing exactly 11:11. A clock on a building wall in one photo, a watch on a found object in another, a digital display on abandoned equipment in another, all showing 11:11. One researcher said the 11:11 pattern appears across unrelated cases in different locations. Either it's remarkable coincidence or that time has significance to whatever causes these disappearances. Some believe 11:11 is a portal time when boundaries between dimensions are thinner. If that's true, photographers capturing images at the 11th of May be documenting moments when they're most vulnerable to whatever takes them. Let's look at a final case where a last photo contains every person who has ever disappeared in that area. In 2019, a photographer took a landscape photo in a national park. The photo showed typical scenic beauty, trees, and mountains. But when enhanced and examined closely, the photo contained figures. Hundreds of figures, barely visible, transparent throughout the image. In the trees, on the trails, standing in clearings, on mountain slopes. Investigators compared these figures to records of missing persons from that park over decades. Every missing person from the park's history was present in that photo. Their faces visible when enhanced, their forms ghost-like but identifiable. All standing together in one photo, as if that location contained all who'd ever vanished there. The photographer who took this image went missing the next day. And if someone were to take another enhanced photo of that location now, the photographer would be visible among the multitude. One researcher said, that photo suggests the missing don't leave. They remain in the locations where they disappeared, existing in a state we can't normally perceive. The camera captured them all together. Dozens of missing people, across decades, still present in that park. The photographer joined them, adding one more figure to the invisible population of those who don't return. As we reach the true conclusion of this exhaustive exploration, we must confront the overwhelming evidence these photos and videos present. This isn't speculation or conspiracy theory. This is documentation. Objective visual evidence captured by cameras from hundreds of cases. Evidence that shows reality doesn't function as we believe in certain locations and circumstances. Evidence of temporal distortions, spatial impossibilities, and entities that exist beyond our normal perception. Evidence that something systematic is happening to people who venture into wilderness areas. The photos don't lie. They capture what's actually there, what's actually happening, even when we can't or don't want to see it. They show us that the world contains mysteries and dangers we've barely begun to understand. They document the final moments before people are taken, changed, or destroyed by forces that operate outside our frameworks. And they serve as the only lasting evidence of what happened, the only testimony from those who can no longer speak. These last photos and videos are more than just images. They're warnings written in light and shadow. They're proof that our understanding of reality is incomplete. They're documentation of a phenomenon that continues, that claims more victims, that leaves only photographic evidence for us to puzzle over. If you take photos in wilderness areas, review them carefully. Look at the backgrounds, the reflections, the shadows. Notice what the camera captures that you didn't consciously see. Pay attention when your photos contain impossibilities, because those impossibilities might be warnings. And understand that every photograph you take might be your last. That the camera might document your disappearance, even as you're unaware it's beginning. That future investigators might examine your final images, looking for clues to what happened to you in those frozen moments. The evidence has been presented in full. Thousands of last photos and videos, all showing patterns that cannot be dismissed or explained away. All pointing to the same disturbing truth. Something is happening in wilderness areas that cameras can document better than human consciousness can perceive. Sleep now with complete knowledge of what the photographic evidence shows? May you never become a subject of study. May your photos always tell stories of safe returns. May you never take an image that becomes evidence of your unexplained disappearance. The cameras have shown us everything they can. The patterns are undeniable. The evidence is overwhelming. The truth is preserved in pixels and frames. And that truth is disturbing beyond measure. Good night. May your dreams be free from the mysteries these photos contain. May you wake with wisdom to heed the warnings. And may you never experience what those captured in these last images experienced. The photographic evidence exists. Permanent, undeniable, disturbing, waiting for us to develop the understanding necessary to fully comprehend what it documents. Until then, we're left with images we can see, but cannot fully explain. Evidence of mysteries that cameras capture and preserve. Documentation of disappearances that defy understanding. Good night. The last photos have told their complete story. Sleep well. And remember, what the camera sees might be more real than what we perceive. Good night.